Yes, I'm
Yeah,
ready.
sure.
All right, let's do it. All right, hello everybody, and welcome to tonight's show. Tonight we have a good show for you guys. A debate that I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I'm completely ignorant of these topics. Okay, we have anarcho-capitalism versus communism, which is amazing. We're all here to learn, right? We all got to learn. Maybe you're like me, and maybe you've never been exposed to these ideas. And these ideas are something you'd like to know a little bit more tonight about, or you'd like to know a little bit more about. And tonight you're going to be exposed to these ideas. Let me go ahead and turn it over to the people that we do have on the panel. We have two awesome people, great gentlemen. Give me 1 second. We have Rampant and Ed Freeze, both people who have been active in my chat for a long time, and I truly appreciate that. So I'll go ahead and give you guys a chance to just introduce yourselves, introduce your channels, and then we'll turn it over to Rampant to do his intro. So Ed Freeze, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let everybody know what you're all about, and plug your channel if you'd like.
All right. Well, I'm Ed. I'm from Holland, as you can obviously see behind me. Um, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. Uh, Not sure what else to say, really. I'll post my channel in the comment section afterwards.
Now,
And
I want to give Ed some credit here because a lot of people give Ed a hard time because he's very vocal about his personal beliefs, which is totally cool. I don't have a problem with people holding their own beliefs, nor do I have a problem with people challenging them. That's one thing you guys should know about me by now. But Ed, you are also an anti-flat earther. Is this correct?
that's very correct.
All
The
right.
Earth is
So
not
it
flat. Flat earthers are idiots.
ding. And that's awesome, man. At least we can all find some common ground to get along on. And then also we have another person, Rampant, who's been on the. I don't know if you were on my channel or Fight's channel before, but I think we were
Oh,
debating the
no, no.
supernatural. Correct.
It's FTFE channel. I was there.
Well, tell
Okay, so
everybody a
I
little bit
am.
about yourself and plug your channel if you don't mind.
Okay, so I'm Rampant, but in my channel, my name is Corrugado. I'm from Chile, and I'm going to defend communism. And let me give me a second to plug my channel there. Uh, and I will put it in the chat team, and you can then paste it because I don't know how to put it directly.
No, if you
Is
can send it to me on Discord and I'll add it to the description later. But go ahead and
oh,
plug
okay,
it in you can plug it in the chat if you'd like.
okay, I will do it later. But that's I'm a communist. I have some really wacky ideas, so just bear with me.
Okay. Now, that was great for the introduction. Now what I'm gonna do is ramp it. I'm gonna turn it over to you. I'm gonna give you about 10 to 15 minutes to present evidence or information that may support your side. And then we will turn it over to Ed Freeze for about 10 to 15 minutes so that he can present his side. And then we'll open it up for the conversation for about 60 to 90 minutes at that point. Are you guys ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, good deal. Well,
Ready?
Rampant, you agreed to go first, so go ahead, Rampant. Whenever you need me to present your slides, you let me know for your PowerPoint. Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna start with the slides, so if you can put them, that will be
Okay. Give
really
me
useful.
Let me go 1 second. Let me get that up. Okay.
The slides I made it like in half an hour, so there may be some typos here and there, but I think it's accurate enough about my position. So that's the presentation. That's communism. Go one down, please. Okay, some definitions. So I want to stress the difference between communism, socialism, and Marxism. Communism is a society without a state, without capitalism, and without money and social classes. Socialism is actually quite different from communism many people were the same, but this distinction has been going at least since the time from Lenin. So socialism is the control of the means of production. The means of production are, the factories, the industries, and in socialism, you have the means of production in the hands of the proletariat class or the working class. And you also have the abolition of the private property. You have actually many forms of socialism. You have, for example, market socialism, which was the movement from Yugoslavia, from the Tito era. And then you have like the classic example of central socialism, which be the USSR. And you have Marxism. I'm not a Marxist. I'm a communist, but I'm not a Marxist. And the difference is that Marxist is a philosophy and historical theory that say that history moves through a sort of Hegelian materialist dialectic. That this means that there's always in any society there's a sort of internal contradiction, and through the resolution of this contradiction, the history moves. And in the case of Marxists, they say the principal struggle is the class struggle, and they put materialism as the defining factor of the society. Can you go one down, please?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay.
There we go.
So, a bit more definitions. Under Marxism, especially during the Lenin era in Russia, socialism was defined as an intermediate step between capitalism and communism. So, socialism is like the middle ground, where the proletariat imposed the dictatorship of the proletarians, says I'm not a socialist. Okay, I don't think we should go through this like intermediate step. I don't think we should go through socialism to reach communism. I think we should go directly into communism. And anarcho-communists, which is like more of the school from people like Kropotkin, sorry, they propose going, as I do, going straight from capitalism to communism. So my position would be better labeled like an anarcho-communist instead of like the classical communist from the Marxist school. Can you go a bit, Wando? Okay. These are some hard truths that I think that every anarchist should accept. First, it's quite improbable that a revolution will impose global communism. I don't believe that there will be like a big like revolution and people will race against the capitalist system and they will throw it down. I would love that to happen, but I don't think it will happen. So I think we, as anarchists in general, even as anarcho-capitalists, we should think of other ways to achieve our goals. And second, I think it's really improbable that communism will ever be global. Even in the case there was like a revolution, I don't think that it will be like as big as capitalism that is almost global. And finally, I think that probably both the states and both capitalism will never disappear. I think they will always exist in one way or another. So I will be working with this like hard truth in mind. Can you go one down, please? So this is like a really common question people ask. Like, has communism ever existed? And I think the answer is yes. We have, for example, and this is an example that Karl Marx actually gives in Des Capital, and he talks about primitive communism. It's in fact the first form of societies humanity ever had. It was like your hunter-gatherer type of society, which was highly capitalist, and there was no state. Here we're talking like the 10,000 BC and back, before the establishment of the first cities and eventually the first empires in Mesopotamia. And there are currently existing anarchist and anarcho-communist societies like the Zapatista movement in Mexico and Rojava, which is in the Middle East. And there is a link I give to Wikipedia where you can see a list of all the different anarchist societies that have existed, which the majority are actually anarcho-communist or anarcho-syndicalist type of societies. And even to this day, many forms of private communists, of primitive communists still exist. You have the Bushmen, which is actually one of the longest living societies in all history. You have the Kaluli in New Guinea, you have the Piranha in the Amazon, and other type of tribes or communities that are communist in their way of ordering their society. Can you go one down, please? Okay, so is communism anti-natural? That's also a really good question that most people tend to have. And in fact, as I said previously, communism was the first form of society ever in the hunter-gatherer societies, and the states or markets, because before markets there were gifts economies, as Mao describes in his book. There were communist societies. They were mostly hunter-gatherer. They were highly nomadic, and in fact, capitalism is a relative modern form of economy. It developed around in the 1600s in Europe, and it arrived from mercantilism and the fall of feudalism. And we have, from history's recollection, we have really great and really complex societies that actually never developed capitalism. For example, we have the Incaic Empire here in America, that they lacked both writing and money, and they were a really, really complex society. We have ancient Rome. Rome was a really big empire, and it wasn't capitalist. And we have, for example, the many Chinese dynasties in the Chinese Empire. For example, the Han Dynasty, which was also not capitalist. In fact, one of the first forms of paper money developed in China, and they were not capitalist. We have, for example, also ancient Egypt, which lasted for millennia and wasn't capitalism. In fact, they had a form of palace economy, which is like a form of really primitive socialist economy, because it was highly centralized in the palace. And for example, coins weren't invented until in Lydia in the 300s BC, and it was probably made to pay armies and to not to develop industries, for example. And money originated in the Middle East, Mesopotamia, and was rarely used to like in the normal population. In fact, it was mostly used like in the temples or in between transactions. I think that the most primitive form of societies was actually communism. Can you go one down, please? So this is also a question many people confuse. Are big governments communist or socialist? And that's not true. For example, many people think that a planned economy, like the 5 years plan that Yugoslavia had, or the USSR had, or China had, are exclusive to communism or socialism. But in fact, many non-socialist countries like India and South Korea both had during a lot of time 5-year plans of economy, and they weren't socialist. Also, many capitalist societies have big government interventions. You have here mostly the Scandinavian model in Europe, and you have in the USA, the military complex, police force, and many safety nets. And other people think that cooperatives are communist, but you have, for example, the Emilia Romagna in Italy, which is like full of cooperatives and is not socialist nor communism. And of course, many people think that both China and Venezuela are communist or socialist, when in fact, Venezuela has like the 47% of their GDP is in the private hands, and China is better described as a form of state capitalism rather than like a socialist country. Can you go one down, please?
That's the end of it right there.
No, I had more.
Oh, yeah, it's showing up over here. Okay, I got you.
Okay. Okay, so this is my particular version of communism. I put a lot of great emphasis in the rejection of modernity and some Enlightenment ideas, like the Western concept of meta narratives. I reject capitalism, and I reject reason and logic as the sole arbiters of understanding of the universe. I think that's a very Western idea. I also have a great emphasis on egoism, from the Max Stirner school. And I think that the union of egoists is actually one of the best forms to form a society. I also put a great emphasis in Buddhism, the secular kind of Buddhism. anti-consumerism, and I'm more for a pastoral and minimalistic simple life. Also, I put great emphasis in meditation and spirituality. I also put a great emphasis in many types of society, like, I don't think that only anarcho-communism should exist. I think that there should be a whole array of different societies so that people can choose where they would want to live, their best society. In that sense, I'm not fully against, for example, anarcho-capitalism. I think that if some people want to have that type of society, they could have it in some place, and there could be like anarcho-communism in some other place. There could be a socialist state in another part. There could be social democracy in other places. And I put a great emphasis in freedom of movement and freedom of speech. Can you go one down? Okay, this is why I think communism is better than the modern world. First, I think capitalism is fundamentally anti-democratic. I think this is because big companies can lobby and spend millions of dollars or euros to push certain laws and certain ideas, while common people can only vote. So I think there's a really big difference between the power common people have in democracy versus the power a capitalist person have in the same system. I also think that there's a fundamental problem between the modern lifestyle we have and the fact that our human bodies didn't evolve to have this sort of lives. I also think that modernity may be a big cause of depression, anxiety, and nihilism in the world. I also think that current industrial ways of producing are detrimental to ecology, being the biggest problem being climate change, but also the acidification of the water, of the oceans, and the depletion of the ozone layer being also an important but not so important problem as climate change. In fact, the ozone layer is actually recovering after some, I think it was after the Kyoto Protocol or the Monterrey Protocol, I don't recall. I also think that consumerism, the fact that people like constantly are buying things and more things and more things, I think that doesn't actually make people happy. I point to the concept in psychology of the hedonic treadmill for this support, and I'm also a great advocate for the dependency theory, which means that I think that poor countries, like third world countries like in Africa or Latin America, are actually kept poor because rich countries are like taking resources from them. So I think that's another problem that capitalism have. Can you go one down, please? So how we will achieve like an anarcho-communist society? As I say, probably not globally, but perhaps in a less global way, like in a more local way. I think there are four ways. First is the Marxist way, which I don't like, going from capitalism to socialism and then to communism. There's the more Marxist socialist way, which is going from capitalism to a sort of social markets or parecon, which is a slight variation of social markets, and then going to communism. And there's the acceleration way, that just expect the whole Western civilization or a big part of the Western civilization to have a socioeconomic collapse. And there's the final, which is, I think, the better one, but the most impossible one of all, the robotic way, going through a social democracy, then having technological unemployment, then getting to a post-scarcity society or post-scarcity economy, and then finally to communism. Can you go? Can you go one down, please? Okay, this is the Marxist route, the one I don't like. This is through the proletariat revolution. People violently seize the means of production, they abolish private property, and they impose a one party system in the country, implementing socialism until the state just withers away. It has been tried before, of course. It has some really positive aspects. For example, the USSR grew from a feudal society, a really, really backward society, and in what, like 50 years, 40 years, they had a really industrialized, big superpotency, and they were sending people to space. But it has mostly negative aspects. There's suppression of freedom of speech, and of course, there's the killing of political dissidents. The gulags and all this stuff. And of course, there's in these big countries that are socialist, there's the constant, like, other big countries are always going to try to destroy you. Like the USSR was under constant surveillance from the United States and from other parts of Europe. So they had to like really always like try to protect themselves, always
Hey, Rampant.
fearing that. Yes.
Rampant. Sorry to interrupt you. You're coming up on your last minute of your presentation. Is there anything you want to focus on? I know you have a few more slides, and I don't think we're going to get them in the last minute. So, is there
No,
anything you want to
I think
focus on?
no, I think we can discuss from here. I can talk about the other routes in the discussion. Yes, I have no
Okay.
problem.
All right. Well, good deal. Thank you, Rampant. I appreciate that the very good presentation of yours. Now, Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir, and I'm going to give
Yes.
you the opportunity to have 10 to 15 minutes uninterrupted to present your side. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Well, anarcho-capitalism. It's in the name. Anarchy, no rulers. Capitalism, voluntary transactions based on, with the focus on goods and services. The reason this is a better system as opposed to government is because government is never accountable for the things they do. In a free market, if you don't like the business, then you can just not spend your money there. So bad business goes out of business. Um, I think I heard you say capitalist state. Well, that's an oxymoron, actually. State can't be capitalist because capitalism is, again, voluntary transactions, and the state um, uses coercion to get what they want. They steal your money through taxes, and you don't really have a choice. And if you defend yourself against it, you'll highly likely get killed by the cops who come arrest you, who you are forced to pay for, by the way. Um, doesn't mean I'm completely against police, because in anarcho-capitalism you will have something that's even better, which is private security, and that means the private security is only there to defend you. They're not there to enforce any law that is basically the opinion of some politician of which you had no control. I mean, you can say you can vote politicians in, but after they are in power, um, they can basically do what they like. So, in a free market, that's not the case, because you'll always be held accountable, because nobody is forced to buy your product. Um, Government forces you to buy their products, and that means they have a monopoly, which means they don't really have an incentive to improve on their business model, because it's just a business model. They're held to the same rules on a market, except for the fact they have an endless money supply, because they can just steal more money from us if they run out. Um, well, what else? Let me see. A good example of the free market improving things is like cell phones. They started in the 80s. Those things were horrible. I think it was Motorola. The large thing only lasted 30 minutes, and it costed a couple of $1,000. But because there's rich people who don't really care about a couple of $1,000, they bought the things. Money was invested in the market, and that way, better products got made. Other companies realized there's money to be made in the market, so they make cheaper and better products, and things went better to the point that everyone can afford a cell phone. That's basically a small computer at this point. If that was left up to the government, then why would they improve? Because they they are the only ones with the product at that point, and you can't buy from anyone else. So yeah, well, I think that's it for my presentation. Um,
Okay.
we can go into the discussion.
Yeah, and both of these guys, I do want to say that both of these guys beforehand were very passionate about what they believe, and I asked them to hold off at least until the debate so we could get some of this conversation because it was good. The pre-show conversation was great. Now I do want to steelman
Right.
both of your positions real quick because just in case someone's coming into it late, I saw some people saying this is not what capitalism's all about. And to Ed's credit, he's not really arguing for capitalism. He's arguing for anarcho-capitalism, which is completely different than what the modern definition of capitalism is. Is that correct, Ed? I'll give you a chance to steelman your position for everybody real quick.
Right. Well, a lot of people don't really understand what capitalism is. They think when they hear capitalism, they think of corporatism, and that means the government sells their power to the highest bidder, and those are often really big corporations. Then the government makes laws and regulations in their favor, which put out competition and creates an unfair marketplace. So that has nothing to do with capitalism, and a lot of people don't realize this.
Okay,
That's all.
so
Right?
we go to the discussion now, or how do we proceed?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay,
So,
first, uh, yes, you go, you go, you go.
right, I heard you say capitalist state. Um,
Yes.
could you explain a
Uh,
bit more what you mean by that?
okay. In fact, let me put the Google, the Wikipedia definition. Actually, I mean, state capitalism was actually implemented by Lenin during the first steps of the Soviet Union. Wikipedia says the following about state capitalism, which I think is a really good definition about it. State capitalism is an economic system in which the state undertakes business and commercial economic activity for profit and where the means of production are organized and managed as a state-owned enterprise, or where there is otherwise a dominance of corporatized government agencies or of public companies such as publicly listed corporations in which the state has controlling shares. So it's a thing, it's real. I don't advocate for state capitalism, but it has been done. It is real. I don't know why you say it's not real. That's really strange
Well,
because
you can call it
you can.
capitalism, but again, that has to do with voluntary transactions based on goods and services. So if you're saying the state is involved, that means it's not voluntary
Uh,
whatsoever, and
well,
therefore it's not
that
capitalism.
okay. That depends. For example, during a time in the United States, they actually had capitalism. Actually, United States was always capitalist, and they had slaves. So it's debatable. Some historians say that there can be some forms of capitalism that are not voluntary. For example, during
Slavery
the
is not
period,
capitalism.
but the United States had capitalism and they had slaves in the South. Everyone knows that. So some
Right, but
historians
again,
say that
but slavery is not capitalism. It doesn't matter what anyone says because slavery is
it depends.
not voluntary
It depends.
whatsoever. No,
It
there's
depends
no
on the
depending
definition.
anything. No,
As I say,
well, then the definition is wrong.
I can actually give you papers, economic papers and historian papers, where people discuss if the South, the United States during their slavery, it was actually a valid capitalist system or if it was a type of
Yeah,
capitalism.
I
So it's a
understand.
valid.
People say a lot of dumb things. It's not
Okay,
valid at
okay.
all. You get
I just say there are actual papers from historians that argue about that, but we can
I understand.
discuss only. We can say state capitalism is not real. Okay, we can agree about that. Even I think it's real because there's actually even a Wikipedia page. There are historians who say that state capitalism is real. But we
Yes, but
can, for the
on
sake of the
Wikipedia,
discussion.
they're also saying the Nazis were extreme right wing and it was a left wing party. So I wouldn't
Okay,
really put
we don't
any
have to
much
go.
value on Wikipedia. So
Okay, I
just
just say
saying.
they have sources, and you can look sources, about when Lenin implemented state capitalism in the Soviet Union. Every
He might
historian
have
knows
called
that.
it that. That's fine. It's fine that people might have called it state capitalism, but again, you can't say things that aren't voluntary. Like that's what the state is.
Okay,
It's
okay. I mean,
completely
for the sake
involuntary.
of the discussion, we can only agree that capitalism is voluntary. Okay, that's fine. I just wanted
Right.
to touch on another topic, and I want to ask you about this. Okay,
Okay.
what do you think about the period from universal history going from the 80s to the 90s, where the IMF and the World Bank implemented policies in a lot of African and Latin American countries, and they actually developed wars, and all these structural adjustments were for neoliberalism. So, how do you explain that these countries that implemented neoliberal policies developed worse than the countries that didn't develop it? How do you explain that?
They developed what? I'm sorry.
They developed worse than the countries that didn't implemented, the IMF and the World Bank
Worse.
policies.
All right. So you're saying the liberal policies helped improve the country, or
No, no, they actually made them worse.
no, made it worse? Yes. Well, of course,
So
because that's what happens if you plan everything to a central point, which
no, no,
is
no.
always
I
the
mean,
government.
the policies were actually that the state will reduce their expenses, and the market will get liberalized. Other companies from out will come to the country, and most countries actually got worse because of this. So how do you explain that?
Ah, yes. Well, you have to understand that those companies didn't just come in there. They made deals with politicians uh, about certain things. So that's like saying I hear a lot of people talk about, well, what about China in Africa? Yeah, well, China can. They're sending companies over there and not the military. So what this tells me is because Africa does have a military, that means their government is allowing those Chinese corporations to enter Africa and mine all the minerals and do whatever they're doing. So that's again a government problem and nothing
But
to do
okay,
with
let's say,
capitalism.
for example, anarcho-capitalism was implemented. Okay, like globally.
Yes.
Let's say it happened
Okay.
tomorrow. What
Okay.
do you think will happen with really poor countries that depend a lot on private companies, and these companies just decide to go to another country, and they cause mass unemployment and massive problems in that community?
I wouldn't know why the corporations who are there now would suddenly leave unless
Oh,
they're
because
doing
there
unfair
wouldn't be
business unless they're
regulations.
doing unfair business practices.
No, no.
Like
I mean, there
if
could
the
be less regulations. I mean, the labor could be cheaper in another country. That now it's cheaper because there are no regulations in that country, because there is not a country, and they could move all their industries from a really poor country to another country, and the poor country will face massive unemployment. People will starve. Don't you think that will be a problem?
all
That the
right,
fact that capital so fast and cause unemployment.
sorry, no, because why the hell would they move if it's such a poor country? The fact that they're poor means they will be satisfied with less salary because it means much more to them. So why would a corporation that's focused on making profit leave such a place where labor is much cheaper than in other places? That doesn't
Okay,
make sense to
I
me.
understand. That's a fair point. Let me put you a real life example. This happened around in 2005 in Swaziland. Swaziland is a really poor country in Africa. In Swaziland, they
Okay.
had they had textile production. They had private companies that were really focused on textile production, and the World Trade Organization, they decided to make some changes in their policies, and suddenly the Asian countries that had like really big regulations in their companies of textile, they suddenly didn't have these regulations. So these companies in Swaziland, they decided to move to Asia because there was cheaper labor, and it caused massive unemployment and a lot of problems. Many people starve to death. Many women who work in the textile industry actually turned into prostitution, and it makes everything worse in Swaziland. So, why do you think that wouldn't happen if anarcho-capitalism was real? Because the fact that the capital can move so fast from countries, it could, and there are so many poor countries that are really dependent on these companies. The fact that these companies can move in like 1 day, 2 days, it could cause a really big problem in these societies because they really depend on these companies, and these companies can go wherever they want at any moment under anarcho-capitalism. Don't you think
Right.
that's a problem?
Well, no, of course they should be allowed to go wherever they want. Why should you force a company to have business where you want them to have
Yes,
business?
what about the people that
I
will
don't see the
die?
use.
What about the mass
Well, let's
unemployment?
go. Well, let's go back to what you said. You talked about the World Trade Organization.
Yes,
I've heard of it
Swaziland
before.
exchange.
What is it exactly? Is it a government thing or
No,
is it a free
it's like
marketing? What is it exactly?
it's like the United Nations, like the World Bank. They're like above
That's
the
government.
country.
United Nations. That's government. Come on.
I mean,
You can't say that's
but you are not seeing what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that the World Trade Organization actually implemented liberal policies in Asian countries, and this caused that in Swaziland many people get unemployed, and many people turn into prostitution, and some people died because
yeah. You said
they rely so much.
regulations. So what did they remove regulations in Asia, or did they
Yes.
implement regulations in the Swaziland? What
No,
exactly happened?
they took away regulations in Asia.
Right.
They took it
Okay.
away. They liberalized the market, and this caused
Yeah.
a lot of problems.
Right. So let me get this straight. Then you're blaming a corporation for going to a country with less regulations so they can make more profit, and you're
No,
not
no, no,
blaming the government for implementing the regulations in Swaziland. What made the corporation leave there? That
no, no.
I, that doesn't make sense.
I'm saying that this company, these people in this
Yes.
country, were so dependent on this company that this company, when it moved
So
away, so I'm saying that if there was a massive anarcho-capitalist society, many poor countries in Africa or Latin America will have
no,
mass unemployment and mass starvation because many
no,
companies.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because what you just told me is the company left because there were still regulations in place that weren't in place in China or Asia. I'm sorry.
No, no,
So
there were less regulations in China, and in Swaziland there was, the
there were
employment was a
more
little.
regulations than in China. There were
Yes,
more
but,
regulations because there's less in
if there
China.
were,
Exactly. So in anarcho-capitalism, there would be zero regulations. So the company wouldn't have any reason to leave
or
unless
they could have
they
other
don't
reasons
do
to
good
leave,
business, such
or they
as
could have other
again,
reasons.
you're naming again, you're talking about a country which has presumably cheap labor. So why would a corporation that's focused on making profit leave a country with cheap labor unless the government
Because
steps
there was
in,
cheaper labor.
implements
No, because
regulations?
there was cheaper
Yeah,
labor in
yes,
Asia.
yes. But why? Because there were less regulations. That's what you told
Yes,
me. So
but
that's the reason they left.
what happens in an anarchist society where there's no regulations, and a country finds that,
Exactly.
I mean,
No
but what will
regulations.
happen? But what will happen in a society where there's a company, and this company says, "Oh, there is cheaper labor," and they go there and they cause mass starvation and mass unemployment in other countries, and that could happen at any moment in any
No.
poor society. Why not?
No, but they're not causing mass starvation because it's not their responsibility to make sure everyone in that country has food. It's their responsibility to do good business practices. And if that's what
Okay,
they're
I don't
doing,
get.
that's their responsibility.
I
Why should
agree,
any?
but
Why should? So look, if I start my own business, why am I suddenly responsible for what other people do with their money? That doesn't make sense to me. If
okay,
they don't
I agree. I
save
agree. They
money
are
to buy food, if they don't buy food, if they don't do anything useful with their money, fine by me. It's not my money. Why should I care?
okay. That's true. It's not the company's fault. I'm just telling, in a realistic situation, if anarcho-capitalism was real,
Well,
there
you
will
no, but you
probably
told
be a
me it's the
lot of
company's fault
anarcho-capitalism.
because you told me. Well, Rampant, hold on. You told me the company is responsible because they're letting the people starve. They're causing mass
I'm
starvation
not
and they're
saying they are
causing people to
morally.
go into
I'm not saying they
prostitution.
are morally responsible. I'm saying they are
But
in
they're
the
not
sense of cause
responsible
and
in
effect.
any way whatsoever. No, that's not
In
their
the sense of
responsibility.
cause and effect, they are the cause of that unemployment
No,
because they are
no,
doing
they're
it.
not a
Yes.
cause. No,
Then
the
what is the
cause is
cause?
the people. No, the cause is the people not using their money in a good fashion, or there's simply other things going on which makes no business want to go there. Because what would be the reason uh, the business leaves and no other business can go there? Or what's the reason those people can't start a business themselves? Like if there
Well,
was a
they are poor
corporation there
people. They can
already, well, no, that's fine. But like China, who comes into Africa, they come there for minerals. In
yes,
anarcho-capitalism, that's just their land and not owned by governments. So
yes.
instead of the corporation from China buying from the government and making deals with them, they're making deals directly with the people who live there. So the people who live there actually get the money and decide what they do with the money. And
Okay,
if
okay,
they are still starving, and if they're still starving, then that's their responsibility, not the
okay,
corporation.
but I think that the problem here is, and my question to you is, well, how the hell do you plan in making anarcho-capitalism real? What's the plan?
Oh, well,
Because I mean,
what do you
there's no
say?
sense in talking
Eh,
about a position that it's impossible. Why?
no, it's not impossible because all it takes is for people to take their own responsibility and be
Okay, but what's the
educated
plan?
on
I
what
mean, I mean, I mean, what's
anarcho-capitalism
the
is.
plan?
It Then there's a thing called the non-aggression principle, which most
Yes.
of us on Earth already live by. Uh,
Okay, but what's the
most
plan?
of
I
our
mean,
lives.
how do you plan in making, for
What do
example,
you
the
mean? What's the
United
plan?
States?
Well, that's the whole thing. No, but nobody has a plan for everyone because it's up to you. You decide what you do with your money and your time. And if you want to be someone who makes like only $1,000 a month and lives on with not a lot of money, then it's up to you. It's your life, it's your money.
I
Do
agree,
what you want, as long as you don't hurt other people. So I don't see the
but how do
problem
you
here. I
plan?
don't need to
How
have a
do you plan
plan.
to stop?
I don't listen. I don't need to have a plan for society. Everyone in society needs to have a plan for themselves.
Okay, so but then I don't see it. How do you make it real? Do you lobby the state? Do you do a
No, of
revolution?
course not. No, not a revolution. Just look, government is just a bunch of people who
The
claim they
government
are
is
in
not going
control
away peacefully.
illegitimately.
It, they are not
No,
going away
no.
peacefully.
Well, you don't know that because if you educate more people on how things can be different, again, the government is just people. And if a lot of them walk away, then you don't really need any revolution or something like that.
So the plan is make people responsible for themselves. That's the plan.
Yes, because now we have like this. How should I put it?
Okay, I
Like an
think it's
extra,
impossible.
like an like we have like an extra parent who's always
I mean,
watching
socialists at
and
least they tried.
wanting us to do stuff. Sorry, what?
I mean, socialists at least they tried. They had like a plan. Like
Yeah, they
let's
tried,
do
and
this.
like 100 million people died or something at
Yeah, yes.
least. So let's not do that
Anarcho-capitalism,
again.
but anarcho-capitalism doesn't have a plan. I mean, it's not going to happen unless you have
No,
like
but
a.
no again, but again, it's not my responsibility to have, or anyone's responsibility to have a plan for everyone. You need to have a plan for yourself. That's it.
Okay.
It's you and the people you freely choose to associate with. Because right now you can't choose to associate or not associate with the government. It's there and you have no fucking choice. But in anarcho capitalism, you're not forced to do anything. If you're
I'm
some
forced to do
guy
something.
what do you mean? Like
Okay.
what?
So, for example, as I understand, in anarcho-capitalism, people should agree to want that from you. We make a deal, right? But for example, in anarcho-capitalism, you have private properties, right?
Sure.
But I never agree to that system. There's a bit of coercion in all this because I never agree to
Why?
have this entire system of private property. I never agree that that's your private property. You say it's your private property, and I must accept it. But I never made any deal with you that I cannot go through there. So you have this entire system, and you are forcing me
Wait
to
a
accept
second.
it.
No, are you saying you are entitled to go everywhere you want, even on private property?
I'm just saying I never made a deal. You forced me to agree to not go there. So there's a bit of coercion in all this.
No, no.
Uh, it,
What are you saying? Are
I
are
never
you
agreed.
saying defend? No, hold on. Wait a second. Are you telling me that defending your own property is coercion?
No, no, no. I'm saying that I never
Then what
agree.
are you saying?
I'm saying that I never agree to say that that's your private property. You said it's your private property, and I have to accept it.
Yes,
We
because
never
I
had a deal.
live there and I
Yes, but
bought
we
the
never had a deal.
land.
Okay, but that's the problem. I never accepted this system. You've put that system, and I'm forced to
Okay,
accept it.
well, right, but there's a gate around my property and there's signs that says if you trespass, you will be shot.
Yes,
So
and that's
good
coercion.
luck.
Yes,
No,
yes,
that's
and
not
that's coercion.
coercion. No. How is that
Saying
how is that
that,
coercion? How is that
okay,
coercion? Please.
saying that if I go there, I will be shot. I think that's coercion.
Why?
Because you are saying go there and I will kill you.
No, I'm not telling you go there. I'm
No, you
telling
say
you
if you
don't
go
go
there, I
there.
will kill you.
No,
Okay,
that's
okay.
not coercion.
Let's go a bit back. So, how do you acquire property in capitalism? What's the way to acquire
No, no.
property?
Well, I think we have to establish what you mean by coercion, because you just told me that defending my private property is coercion, and that
I'm just
doesn't
saying,
make any sense
saying
whatsoever.
to, I think that saying to someone that that's a bit like applying violence to make me not go there. And I never agreed that that was your
No,
place. We never agreed that
I'm
the
not. I'm
rules of
not
the game were
applying,
that.
but I'm not applying violence at all. I'm just saying this is my property, and listen, if you enter my property, let's say some guy just walks into your house right now. You don't
Mhm.
know what he's gonna do, or if he's a danger to your life, if he's gonna kill you. You don't know anything about that person. So, and if there's signs everywhere, and if it's clearly your house that he's entering, why shouldn't you have the right to defend yourself?
No, no, I agree. I think that you could defend yourself. I'm just saying that's coercion
Then why are you telling me it's coercion?
because
Are
it
you
is
kidding
coercion.
me?
I'm not saying I'm against that. I'm saying it is coercion.
But it's
I'm
not
not saying it's bad.
coercion.
Okay,
But
did
it's
we
not
agree that that
coercion.
was your private
I'm not. I'm
property?
not
Did we
for.
agree?
I'm not forcing you to do anything.
No, but it's strange. You invent this system, this arbitrary system that says, under my arbitrary rules, this is mine, this is from him, and then you force me to accept your arbitrary rules. Why should I accept your
No.
arbitrary? They
Well,
are
look. If
arbitrary.
I buy no, if I'm buying land from someone, that's none of your business, and you
Oh,
don't
okay,
have a say in the matter.
but let's trace this back. How did that person acquire that land? Okay, from another person, right?
From their family,
And
probably.
acquired it with
Irrelevant.
violence. No. I mean, if the whole chain is
No,
not
but
legitimate, then you
yeah,
are
I know
actually
where you're
acquiring
going with
a
this.
non-legitimate
Yeah,
land.
y- yeah, I know where you're going with this. But every country was created by war. That's
Okay,
just
so you are
how
acquiring,
humanity was
you
in the
are you
past.
are you are buying land that was originally stolen from someone else. Doesn't that make it
Yeah,
like a bit?
300 years ago.
Yes, but it's still
Yeah,
non-legitimate.
no, t- well, tough luck. It is actually because those people
Okay,
don't even live
so
anymore.
okay, so
It's
if I
been
stole
passed on from
something,
from generation to generation, and
okay, so let me see. If
doesn't
I
really
steal
matter.
something, if I steal something and then I kill that person and all his family, suddenly it's mine and there's no problem with me selling it.
No, no, that's a straw man. But if you go on like 300 years, then countries are already made. You know,
Yes,
that's how
I'm
humans
saying.
use that's how humans just used to live, and that doesn't mean you can go around and say, well, this actually belongs to blah blah. Well, those people don't even live anymore. So what
No,
the hell are you
I
talking
agree.
about?
I totally agree. They are not living. All I'm saying is that you have land that was stolen, and you are making me agree that even if it was stolen, it's yours. But
Well, it
I'm
belongs to
asking you
someone else now. So
why I need to agree to all this idea. Why? The
what do
idea
you
that
mean you
someone
need
can
to
go to
agree?
for example, the idea that someone can steal something and then kill the original owner and then sell it to you and that's okay, or the idea that someone can
No, I never. No, no, that's a straw man. I
go
never
to a
said
place
that's
and
okay. I
say,
just said that's how humans used to get land, and
yes, I agree,
land is
but
just
why
owned
why
by
should
somebody.
I agree? Why should I agree to that system? You haven't explained me.
Well, no, that's fine if you don't agree. Open your door and let everyone in.
No, but why should I agree that your
Oh,
property, even if it was
oh,
originally
no, that's
stolen?
fine. That's no, but we already went past the originally stolen thing. That's just how humans existed. That's how countries were made. Again, by
It was
governments.
still
Not,
originally
not,
stolen. I mean,
but it's made by governments, not by the citizens. So you can't blame a citizen who lives here, owns land through their family, or bought it legitimately for something that governments did.
no,
You have to
I
complain to the government, not
I,
me,
I,
not
I
any
totally agree.
anarcho
I'm not blaming
they,
anyone.
because they acquired the land through inheritance from their family or they bought it legitimately. That has nothing to do with the government. They were just
Okay,
born here.
okay. You
So
voted
complain to the government
legitimately.
about it.
Okay, but you voted legitimately, and who said it's legitimate? The state, right?
Again, open your door.
No, no.
Let
I'm just
everyone in.
saying you have this
No,
entire
but
system,
you're
and
just yeah,
and you just
yeah,
want me
but
to accept
you're
it.
just saying. Yeah, you're just saying, but at the same time, you lock your door and don't let anyone in. So
Yes,
what are you saying? So what are you saying then?
I'm saying that I don't see a lot of liberty or a lot of agreement between people in your system. What I see is a system that was arbitrarily
There
made,
is
and people are
agreement.
just forced to accept it.
No, there is agreement already.
I don't
Does
agree with it.
everyone go? If really you go into other people's houses?
No, no, I don't do it because
Okay, well,
I don't
why?
like
Why
it.
not?
Because I don't like doing it, and because I will go to jail.
Because
But
because
that
you
doesn't
respect
mean
because
I
you
ag-
respect Because you respect their property. Is that the
Mhm.
reason you respect their
Yes,
privacy,
I respect
private
property, and I don't
property?
want to go to
It's
jail. Those are the two
their
reasons.
house, not your house. Okay, so then you already agree. There's no problem.
No, no, I agree to do it because I'm a person that respects other people's. I don't agree because I think
Exactly.
that's liberty. I don't think that's
What do you
liberty because what happens if a person just doesn't agree with that system? How do you force it to agree to your system?
they're
You
a
need to force it.
criminal and criminal. No, if you
Yes.
go onto other people's property and it's their property and there are signs all over,
Who
or
says
you're
it's their
just
property?
or I wasn't finished, or you're just going into their house, that's criminal behavior. That's trespassing.
Who says it's
So
your property? The
because
state
they
says.
because they inherited it from their family or
Who
bought it
says?
legitimately.
Yeah, but who says inheriting is a valid form of acquiring property? Who say that? Who say that that was a
Because
valid form of getting property?
what do you mean?
Okay, you say okay, they inherited from their families, but who
Yeah, or
says
they
that
bought
that's the way?
bought
Okay,
it
other
from
body,
someone.
but who put the rules? Who says those are the rules to acquire things? Who actually made those rules?
The people who
Because they are
buy and sell, the people who buy and
okay.
sell decide what the rules are for them.
Okay, and why should I agree to those rules if I never
Because it's
agreed to them?
not your property. And if you don't agree,
Ah,
you can go
but
there. That's trespassing. You didn't pay
you
for
are doing a
the.
thing. You are saying
It
these
was
people
not
say
from your family. It was not
no, no, but
inherited from your.
you are actually doing a
It's
circular argument here.
or
You are
they
saying
bought. They paid money for it.
no, no, I agree,
You,
but listen to me.
I don't.
You
You
are doing a circular argument. You are doing a
what's
circular argument because you are saying these people have this property because they agree it is their property. And I ask you, why should I respect an agreement I never did? And you are saying because they did that agreement. So it's actually a
because
really
it's none of
arbitrary
your
system.
business. No, it's because it's none of your business.
It's
Nobody
my
has.
I want to go to a
No,
property.
it's not your business. Listen, you have your house over there, so you decide what you do with that, and other people have their houses and their land, and they decide what they do with that. That's none of your business. It's none
Oh,
of
okay.
government.
So I see. So a bunch of people made an arbitrary set of rules, and I'm just forced to accept them. Okay, I can agree with that, but that's not actually
No, you're
liberty.
not
That's
forced. No, no, again, stop it. That's a straw man. You're not forced to accept anything. Go
I
on the
am
land. Yes. No, you're not, because you haven't told me how you're forced to accept anything. You talked about coercion earlier, and you never
because
explained how it's coercion.
uh,
How is it
you are going to
coercion?
kill me if I don't accept your rules. That's coercion.
That's not. No,
You are
no,
saying these
it's
are my rules, and I will kill you if you don't follow them.
no. I'm telling you, don't come on my property.
You
That's
are
all.
saying you are saying under an arbitrary set of rules, we agree that this is my property, and I will shoot you if you try to pass.
That's not
You are
arbitrary set
saying
of rules. No, I actually got the land through inheritance,
this
or I
bunch of
bought
other
it
people.
legit.
Ah, and who said it was
Sorry,
legitimate? The bunch of people which you agreed to have that arrangement.
because I bought yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's
They owned the
arbitrary.
land previously.
It's a bunch
They
of
own no.
people making up some rules.
Stop it. They owned the land previously. I bought it from them voluntarily. We made an agreement
You made
voluntarily.
a bunch of
There
rules, right?
There's no coercion involved whatsoever. I don't
This
understand why you can't get this. Because you never told me the coercion.
because you are making a bunch of rules completely arbitrary with a set of people, and you're asking people who never made or even were when this agreement
It's not your
happened,
land.
and
You
you're
have no
saying
say
they
in
have to
the
follow
matter. You have no say in the matter. It's not your land.
and it's
If
your
you
land
want to play
because
this
arbitrary
no,
made some
no,
rules.
hold on, stop. If you want to play this game, that's fine. Open your door. Anyone who comes in, you can't complain because they didn't
But,
agree to your rules.
but
No,
the issue is
listen, no, please, just go ahead, open your door right now. And don't
Why?
complain when anyone comes in or
Oh,
takes your
I'm
stuff,
not gonna agree.
because they never agree to your rules. You just made it up.
Uh, yes,
You're
uh,
coercing them. You're coercing
yes,
them not to steal your
yes.
property.
I am
You're
coercing them.
coercing.
That's right.
Oh,
Yes,
really?
and I
That's
and I,
not
and I, and I
coercion. That's
Hey,
you
Ed,
insane.
Ed, give him a
not
chance to
against that
answer.
thing.
Give him a chance to answer. Go ahead, Rampant.
Okay, I'm just saying you have a bunch of people making a bunch of arbitrary rules. You're saying, oh, if I buy this from you, it's suddenly mine. If I'm the first person of going into a land, it's my land. And you say, oh, yeah, we agree. This is the rule. Are the rules. And then you are saying everyone must respect this, even if they weren't even close to when the agreements were made. Even if that person doesn't agree that that's a legitimate way of acquiring land. We decided that this is the way. And since we decided this our place and you cannot go there. But I never agreed to that. I never agreed
Yeah,
to this
that's
entire
fine.
system of
That's fine. If you
buying
don't,
things and acquiring land. I never agree. You just made it up and you expect everyone to follow it.
All right, now let
right,
Ed answer. Go ahead,
but
Ed.
it's not your land, so it doesn't matter what you think.
Okay. But okay, I think we can move on from here. I think we are stuck. I'm trying to make an even broader point, which is that each time you buy something, for example, in the United States, you are agreeing that that land is under United States rules. So you are agreeing to have the United States have some sort of jurisdiction over your land
No,
because
they
it's
assume
the land of the United States. So
no,
why
no.
will taxes
That's how it
be a form of
works.
coercion if you are already agreeing when you buy something that you are buying something under the United States and you need to follow the
No,
rules?
that's not the same because the government actually claims jurisdiction over the complete area, even when people live there. So the government claims jurisdiction in your house. You don't
Okay.
have a say in your house. The government does,
Because when you bought
and
the land, you agree to that.
different.
That was part of the contract.
No, they enforced their dominance through
Nobody
coercion, through
forced you to get a nobody forced you to get
laws,
a house.
through the military. Well, you
Okay,
were
because it's their land, it's their
no,
place. Nobody forced you to get a
no,
house or
it's not their land. I didn't buy
why?
anything or
Why not?
didn't inherit anything. That's not how it works. Again, the your own property is separate from the government. Yet the government completely
You,
asserts
you are you are buying a property under the
yet
arbitrary rules of the
hold
United States, and
hold
they say
hold on. Yet hold on. Yet the government asserts dominance over everyone's property. That's the
because
difference. You can have your
it's their
no,
land.
stop. You can have your own house. You can have your own house, your own property. That's fine. But you don't get to say what goes on in other people's property or house. And
No,
government
because
doesn't really care.
you are acquiring a house that's under the arbitrary rules of the United States, and you must respect them. And when you sign the contract to acquire the land or to acquire
No,
the house, you are agreeing to that because you are
no,
free to
you're not.
not buy a
No, you're not agreeing to anything because actually that's where the coercion comes in. Because the
right
government, uh, when you buy something where government is present,
because it's
because
their
they
land.
claim because no, it's not their land because they claim they steal a part of the transaction through taxes and all that sort of stuff. They send their
you are free
cups
to go out.
to
You are free to go to another country.
stop it. I'm not finished. Stop it. They enforce their laws through violence and threats of violence with police and military. And when I have my own property and you have your own property, we just have our own property and we don't get to say how the other person lives. But the
Oh,
government can decide how other people live.
okay. Let me
That's
get
where
this
the
straight. Okay, let me get this straight. So you can have an arbitrary set of rules made by some people, the
I
rules,
don't know why. I
but
don't know why you keep saying arbitrary. Everything is
they are
arbitrary. Stop
arbitrary.
saying
They are made up rules. They are made up rules. They are not like natural laws of.
every rule is made up. Everything
Yes,
is made
that's my
up.
point. So you have
Yeah.
these rules that you say,
Yeah,
this is my land. Okay, let me finish, please. You have these rules that say, this is my land. I put the rules. And the United States has their own set of arbitrary rules and say, oh, this is my land. You can buy a house, but if you buy a house, you need to pay taxes, you need to do this. Do you agree? And do you see
well,
what's the difference?
They
They are
do that
more
under threat.
arbitrary.
They do that under threat of violence. And let's say some family lives somewhere in a state on a piece of land. That's their land, but then they want to sell it to someone, and then comes the government interfering with voluntary transactions. And I don't
Yes,
see
because they are happening
why.
in their land and they put the rules in their land because it's their
No,
land,
it's
you
not
know?
their. No, it's not their land. It was never
It
their land.
is their
They
land.
just
You
said,
can see
well,
the paper in the constitution
no,
that says,
it's not their
this
land.
is my fucking land,
No,
bitch.
it's not. It's not government's land. They just claim dominance with the threat of violence from police and military. That's
And you
not
will do the same
legitimate
in you will do
land.
the same in anarcho-capitalism. You will have this set
No,
of rules arbitrary and you will
no,
say, I can kill you, you
no.
pass through my property. It's really a
Again,
thing, you know?
again, all rules are arbitrary. It doesn't mean anything that you keep saying the word arbitrary. So, and again, under
So why your
anarcho-capitalism, you
arbitrary rules are
stop
better
it.
than
I was
the arbitrary? Oh, okay,
finished.
sorry.
Stop it. Under anarcho-capitalism, you have your property, though there your rules apply. In my house, my property, my rules apply. As long as you don't hurt other people. And everyone is free to go there and accept my rules or not go there. There is no coercion whatsoever. Because if you want to make a transaction or a voluntary transaction or however you want to call it on your property, nobody has anything to say about that whatsoever. Nothing. That's totally up to you and the person you're dealing with.
Transactions
That's
are
not how
free.
it's working now.
But if you made in your property the rule that everyone that makes a transaction in my private property must pay me $1, everyone should do it, or they can leave your house,
No,
right? Your private property.
no,
So you are not free to
that's
put the rules in your private property. Huh?
well, people can leave then. And again, how am I supposed to
You can leave
force
the
them?
United States of America.
Hold on, how no? How am I supposed to force them to pay me 1% when they make a transaction on my property unless I use violence? And that's against the non-aggression principle, which is a big part of anarcho-capitalism. So what you're describing here wouldn't happen unless the person you're describing is a criminal. So are
Okay,
you talking
so
about, or are you
no,
talking
no,
about an anarcho-capitalist?
no. I'm saying that.
Please,
So in
please
your
be clear.
house, you make your house. In your house, if you make the rules and people don't
Please
follow
answer
them,
the question? Are you talking about a criminal or an anarcho-capitalist?
an anarcho-capitalist, of
Which
course.
all right. Well, then there's no aggression involved, and I can't force the people to pay me 1%. I can just tell
It's
them
a
get off my property. That's all.
okay.
There's no
The United,
coercion
the
whatsoever.
United.
All right.
So, would you agree that the United States can force you to leave the country if you don't pay tax? If they say, okay, if you don't pay taxes, you
No,
get the hell
because
out of here.
that's theft. No, because first of all, that's theft. And second, they are not the legitimate owners of anything.
Yes,
They
but it's
steal
weird
everything
because
they have.
when you sign a contract in the United States, you agree that if you don't pay taxes, you will go to jail. I
No,
mean,
you
you
don't. You
already
don't
agree
agree.
to that.
No, you don't agree with
What,
anything.
you
That's
agreed with that
coercion.
when you buy. Oh, but when
No,
you buy something, you sign a contract,
no, incorrect. You are
and that contract
forced to agree. No,
you are not forced to buy a
incorrect.
house. That's not true.
Incorrect. You are forced to agree with their rules under the threat of violence.
No,
Under
you
anarcho-capitalism,
can
you can just buy your property.
buy a property in the United States, but if you do it, you need to agree to the
Yes.
rules because it's their land. It's
Yes,
their
you're
arbitrary.
forced to agree. You're forced to agree under the threat of violence from an illegitimate owner.
Why owner and yours is not owner
Because they don't own
also? You are
anything. Everything the government has, they steal from other people. They don't own anything. They just steal under the threat of violence. And if you defend yourself against it, you get shot or locked in a
okay.
cage for
Okay,
the rest of your life.
I think we're talking past each other at this point. You have
No, we're
some
not talking
question to
past
me.
each other. You simply don't. You're simply stuck in this mindset of the government being legitimate.
Honestly, if do
I get it, and I get it because everyone is taught in schools from the first day they go to, well, not probably the first day, but when you're aware of these things, you're always taught, we need government for this, we need government for that.
uh,
And as soon as you
I'm
say anything against,
anarchist. I'm an
and
anarchist.
as
I
soon
am
as
against.
they, well, then why are you so stuck on the state being legitimate in anything?
I never said it was
Yes,
legitimate. And it's not illegitimate. It's just an arbitrary set of rules that
no.
some people made up.
Well, you keep saying arbitrary, but again, all rules are arbitrary, so that doesn't
That's the
add
issue.
anything. Yeah, but you keep giving these arguments as if the government owns anything legitimately, and you
Under
never
their set
go.
of rules, I just think that the United States has the same amount of legitimacy as your movement in anarcho-capitalism. They're both made up rules
Just
that
because
people
they're
should.
made up doesn't mean anything, because again, all rules are made up. Saying the
That's
rules are made up doesn't, but it doesn't add anything to say that because all rules are made up. But the point
it
is,
means you're acquiring
people
property that's not legitimate because it's made up.
no, because people already own land now, and
Under an
the
arbitrary set of rules.
and stop it. And the only thing different is that the government now steps in and says, "Well, wait a second. No, this is my land." Well, why? Did you buy it? Did you inherit it? No, I just claim it. And if you don't agree, I'm going to send my cops and you'll be arrested. That's the
But
difference. That's why you're not legitimate. And I can't
it's the same.
understand why you're so stuck. Why are you so stuck on the government being legitimate when they use violence and don't use any voluntary system whatsoever? Everything they do is coercion. Everything. And under anarcho capitalism, nothing is coercion because that's against the non aggression principle. And again, anarcho capitalism, anarchy, no rulers, capitalism, voluntary transactions regarding goods and services. So there's no coercion whatsoever involved in anarcho capitalism. And anything you try to describe in anarcho capitalism that has to do with coercion is either someone trying to claim they're the legitimate owner of anything when they're not, which means they're breaking the non aggression principle, or they're trying to form a government system, which is again coercion and again against the non aggression principle. So it has nothing to do with anarcho
Okay.
capitalism you're
But
describing.
okay, we agree that all set of rules are arbitrary. So you cannot say
Again,
that
that doesn't mean
under anarcho-capitalism you have a
yes, you
legitimate
do,
right to
because
arbitrary.
all rules are arbitrary. That doesn't add anything. What you're saying.
How can it be legitimate if it's arbitrary? How can it be legitimate if it's just made up?
Because I already own the land. What do you mean?
Under a
How can
made
it
up
be
rule,
legitimate?
you
How
own
can
the
you
land
say
and
why is that why is that even a question? All things in maths were arbitrary when they were made up. Things in maths are still legitimate. So your question doesn't make any sense.
legitimate under a set of arbitrary rules, but it may not be legitimate
Doesn't
under a set
matter.
of other
Doesn't
arbitrary
matter.
rules.
Anything made up in mathematics was arbitrary, and it still works. So it doesn't matter that it's
Are you saying
arbitrary.
that?
Stop saying arbitrary as if it adds anything. It doesn't add anything.
Okay.
It's completely
I think we are
meaningless.
stuck in this point. I think we are stuck in this point. We
No,
are
you
talking
are
about
stuck,
each other.
but that's fine. We can talk
Let
about
me let
something.
me
Okay.
interject. Let me interject 1 second. We have 20 minutes left in this open discussion part, and then I'm going to bring on another individual to have to change the conversation just slightly. But go ahead, you guys. I just want to give you that we got about 20 minutes left.
Okay. I just want to introduce another
Well,
concept.
I have a question for you actually because you've been asking a lot.
Okay.
So, how would you, if you're saying you're not a socialist or a Marxist, then, um, and if you look at all the countries that have tried to get to communism, and they all used Marxism or socialism to try to get there, and it's always ends up in fascism, totalitarianism. Hundreds of millions of people have died already from it. How would you? How do you think you can get humanity to go to communism when it's in our nature to have free trade with each other?
Okay. So first of all, there are places where anarcho-communism has been tried, and it's actually currently
Yeah, you talked
being
about
tried.
primitive
Zapa-
tribes,
no,
primitive
no,
tribes.
also Rojava and the Zapatista movement. They are actually anarcho-communist places, and they are currently still going. So there you have a bunch of examples. How would I
But
plan to go to a what?
how do they function? Do they have like a good economy? Are there no poor people? Does
For
everyone have enough
example,
to eat?
the Zapatista movement already started in a really poor commune of Mexico, but it's actually doing better than the neighbor communes that are state owned. So, and they have a form of direct democracy. They have a lot of social securities, and they usually have free trade also.
Right, but are well that you can't have free trade in
You
communism. That
can have
doesn't.
free markets and not have capitalism. That's possible. In fact, for the most part
No,
of
that's
history,
not.
there was free market. Yes, you can. Why not?
No, that's an oxymoron. You can't have voluntary
Well, so
transactions if
explain
things
me
are
how
not
did
voluntary.
the okay, explain me how did the imperial China period work it, where they were merchants and there was free markets, but there was not capitalism? How
Well,
did that work?
no. Let's get back to the examples you gave because
I
what
it's just
have those?
why can't you
Well,
have free
no.
markets and capitalism?
What? No,
Why can't you have
that's
free
an
markets
oxymoron.
without capitalism? No, it's not an
That's
oxymoron. So there were
no,
never free markets until capitalism, like never, not at all.
no. Hold
Despite
on.
the fact
So
that the Arabians had a
hold
free
on,
market.
hold on, hold on. How do those communities you mentioned who supposedly have communism, how do they function? What did they accomplish in the world as opposed to like the Western world?
Well, there are really tiny places. They are still developing, trying to survive. So not much.
Right. So nothing. So nothing.
Well, but for example, under capitalism, in fact, most of the inventions or most of the physics, most of the science was already originally done by the state. For example, how did the Higgs boson will be discovered under anarcho-capitalism, for example? Why would anyone build a multi-billion-dollar particle accelerator if there is no profit to be made with the discovery of the Higgs boson, for
What do you
example?
mean there's no profit to be made? There's always profit to be made in new discoveries.
Okay,
But let's get back to
what is the profit?
let's
What is the profit in the Higgs boson? Explain me that. How do you make money
you,
with that?
you won't know until you actually discovered the thing you're looking for or made some new discoveries around that. But that doesn't really matter. What Let's get back to the how would you go to having a functional communist world without
Well,
going through socialism or Marxism first?
the Zapatista movement is a functional society. Now, I could ask you, can you give me an
No,
example of
it's
a
very
functional capitalist society? Has there ever been such a thing?
well. humanity still lives. So yeah, like the Western world where
Anarcho-capitalism. I want an example
communists.
of anarcho-capitalism. Please give me an example.
No, no,
I want to see it.
no, no, no. You're dodging. I asked you, how are you going to go to communism all over the world without going through socialism or Marxism first? That's what
I
I
never
asked.
said I never said I thought it would be a global movement. I think it can be tried in
So,
many places. I don't think it can be global
so communism will never go global. Why not?
because I think that there may be a lot of varieties of states. For example, not even capitalism is global. There are places like Cuba, like like China, like other places that are like North Korea that are not capitalist. So not even capitalism can be global. I don't think any system can actually be global. And most certainly, I don't think anarcho-capitalism has ever been tried. So it's just pure speculation.
Well, no, it actually has. But again, well
Well,
then,
give me an example
why,
of
why,
anarcho-capitalism.
why can't communism go global? Why wouldn't that work?
There are many reasons. I think that the primary reason is that every time like begins, there's a lot of attack from foreign countries. Like for example, when there was the civil war in the USSR, the United States, Great Britain, I think it was France, they were all attacking them. And through all the history of the Soviet Union, they were always under constant attack from the United States, from the threat that the United States will kill them. Same goes, for example, with Cuba. Cuba has gone through a lot of coup d'etat attempts. So I don't think it will be
Right.
global
But
because
why?
each time it matures or it starts, they are other people trying to destroy it, like whatever
Yes,
in
and
whatever way.
the reason, yes, but they're not trying to destroy it per se. They're trying to take down the government, who is a dictatorship 9 out of 10 times, and kills tons, if not millions, of civilians. That's the reason that the government of those countries gets attacked or ridiculed or whatever you want to call it by other countries. It's not
I agree.
because they are specifically yeah. So are all right. So you're essentially agreeing then that everywhere people try communism, it ends up in the government killing all its civilians,
No,
because
for
that's the
example, in
reason.
the
But that's the reason they get
no,
attacked by
no,
other countries. It's because
I,
they kill their own civilians.
I never say that. For example, in the Zapatista movement and in the Rojava, there's not a mass murder, and they are real places. They exist. So no, it's not true
Right? But
that
it's very,
communism.
but it's very tiny.
Yes, but in other places where it has been tried, it doesn't end in violence. You can look the Wikipedia page I give, and you can see
Because
dozens
very
and
small
dozens of examples.
scale. But whenever it's tried on and I'm not even saying those small scales actually work,
Yes,
because
but I never
what do
said it should be tried. I never say it should be
what
tried like.
they accomplish in the real world? Basically nothing. So
I
doesn't
mean, they
doesn't
are
really.
free. They have the form of government the people in their like. I think that's something worth fighting for.
Well, whenever there's a government, you're not free.
But they are
So
not governments. They are
you
communist
can't say you
societies.
can't say you're free.
They
Well,
don't have like a state.
then who decides what they're doing and how they
I
get
mean, I
by?
think you have a confusion between state, country, nation, and government. So, if you could explain me the
But
difference between those,
how do they decide how
they have
the
usually a form of direct democracy.
right? So it is then a form of coercion, because let's say the group votes for one thing and there's people who don't want it. Then what if they disagree? Are they
They
forced
can
to
they can
comply?
go.
How does it
No, they can
work?
go. They
Right.
can go to another place.
Okay.
Okay, and now I have a
Yeah,
question for you.
but wait a second. Let's say I have my house there already, and there comes this commune or communist thing or whatever, and they start to have their votes. Well, wait a second. I'm already living here. Who are you to decide anything about my house? And then you're telling me, well, I can go. Well, why? Why shouldn't you just go? That doesn't make
Because we
sense.
don't want to go, because we decided through democracy that we are not going to go.
Right. So that's coercion then,
Yes, it is.
right. So you would
I
rather
think
have
I actually
coercion.
think all,
So wait a second. You would rather have
all for
coercion than
even
free.
anarcho-capitalism has a form of coercion. I don't think there are
No, there's
free
no coercion.
coercion
No,
in
there's
Anarcho.
no coercion. There's no
Yes, it is.
coercion involved
I
whatsoever.
have to agree
Then
with
it
you. You're
breaks.
made of rules.
Yeah, but if there's coercion, then it breaks the non-aggression principle, and then it has nothing to do with anarcho-capitalism, and that person is just a
Okay, okay.
criminal.
There's no coercion. I only need to accept your arbitrary set of rules that you made up with a bunch of friends. And if I don't
Again,
accept them,
saying,
I will die. You will
saying
shoot me. Okay,
arbitrary adds nothing. Saying arbitrary adds nothing. Doesn't
okay.
matter.
I, I want to ask you a question. Why in an anarcho-capitalist society will not the big companies try to make a state, given that big companies usually benefit a lot from states? Wouldn't they try to like make a state so they can get benefits? I mean, like they could
They,
get
they,
more
they can
stuff.
try. They can try, but that's using coercion or aggression, and that's breaking the
Yes,
non-aggression principle.
but why in
People are
anarcho-capitalism big companies
hold
wouldn't
on,
do it? I mean, why wouldn't they?
hold on. I wasn't finished. Hold on. They would still try because that's what humans sometimes do. Not everyone is a good person, but the difference
Mhm,
is right now, if someone tries to do that, the state is already there, and they can just buy the power of the politicians. In
mhm.
anarcho-capitalism, you have your own responsibility, and that also means you can have your own self-defense as you like. And if
Yes,
someone
but
engages I wasn't finished. Stop interrupting. And if someone engages in aggression, you can use self defense to defend yourself against that. And if that happens now, you can't defend yourself against that because the corporations use the power of the government. And if you defend yourself against government aggression, you either get killed on the spot or you get sent to prison for the rest of your life.
okay, let
That's
me get this. So, so big companies, they are big and they say, okay, we are big. We want to close competition. We are going to create a state. And you are saying, no, in my tiny house, I don't want to have a state. So I am going to defend my house with a gun against you big corporations that have an entire army. Yeah, that's not
Well,
going to
they
work.
first of all they well yeah it would because first of all you have other people living there who also don't want the state and who also are going to defend themselves and other people against aggression, and then of course that corporation first has to build up all that stuff,
Mhm.
and if you're getting wind of some corporation building up a military like next to your town, that's a form of aggression. So I don't
No, I
see
mean, they are just
the
freely doing
point.
their private property an army, and they
No,
could perhaps acquire nuclear weapons in their free private house. They could get a nuclear bomb. You know, that's their house, that's their
right.
private property.
No, no, you can't get a nuclear bomb in
Why not? If you are rich,
anarcho-capitalism.
you can build one
No,
bomb. You know.
because if you have a nuclear bomb,
All right,
you can't use whenever you use it. There's too many casualties. You
okay,
can't go.
guys,
I mean, uh,
listen. I'm gonna give you guys 5 minutes to finish your arguments out. This is rapid fire, so go ahead.
who goes first? Excuse me.
Oh, just go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Just go ahead.
Okay, I will go first if you are fine with that. Okay, I'll
Oh
go.
yeah,
Uh,
it's
I think.
closing step.
Okay. Yes, I think anarcho-capitalism is like a trash ideology. I mean, they don't even have a plan to make it. And even if it was done, I think that big companies will just try to create another state so they can make lobby and they can get and close the competition and just have big monopolies. So I don't think it will ever work. I mean, it doesn't even have a functional plan to work. Anarcho-communism, on the other hand, first, it has been tried. Without second, I think it will be a more functional society because we have democracy. While in an anarcho-capitalist society, I just need to agree to your rules, or otherwise you will kill me. Arbitrary rules, that must be said. And I honestly just don't see why we should talk about anarcho-capitalism if it doesn't even have a plan to begin with. I mean, I could make all sort of like impossible scenarios and saying, "Oh, in my magical world, everyone thinks like me and everything is perfect." But that's not realistic. There's not a realistic way to make anarcho-capitalism. And if it was safe, as I said, big companies will just make a new state because real life companies, real
Go ahead,
life
Ed.
monopolies. Okay, that's all.
No, no, I mean, this wasn't the outro. I just wanted you guys to go back and forth rapid fire. So go ahead, Ed. I want to give him a chance to speak.
You can speak it. I just say my word.
Okay. Well, again, people trying to form the state is an act of aggression because the state uses coercion and nothing is voluntary, so you can defend yourself against that. So there's no problem with that in anarcho-capitalism. There's also no coercion in anarcho-capitalism because again, it's without rulers and voluntary transactions based on goods and
I
services.
mean, you can just buy a nuclear weapon in your private property and have
No,
it there.
oh
Okay.
no, I already went over that. Having nuclear weapons is against the non-aggression principle because whenever you use it, there will be people who die. First of all, and second of all, there will always be.
Yeah,
How do you
I
say
don't
that?
think I don't think
People,
that people can argue
dude,
against a
dude,
nuclear weapon.
stop interrupting. I wasn't finished. There will always be casualties who you can't account for. So you going back to the nuclear bomb thing doesn't make any sense. In anarcho-communism, or first of all, this doesn't make any sense. You need a state to have things planned. Otherwise, the nation can't function. People won't do the right thing out of themselves for the good of society. They will do what's best for them because human nature is just like that. People are selfish, and well, in anarcho-capitalism, that actually works because you have to provide uh, good business practices. Otherwise, people just boycott you, and you're out of business. With
Or
the
you can make a
government,
monopoly and close the entire
with
market.
no, you can't because then you have
Why
to
not?
buy out all the competition. And under government, you can just have laws and regulations made in your favor that stifle out the competition, and you will be the only one in their marketplace,
But
and you will have to.
that's my point.
But
Why?
under anarcho-capitalism, there are no laws and regulations like that. So it's always a fair marketplace. There will always be the next guy who can come in and say, "Well, I'm going to open up my business," and then you have competition. So it doesn't really make sense to say there's a monopoly in anarcho-capitalism unless you have earned it
Uh,
with this,
yes, but,
unless you have earned it with good business practices. Doesn't
but my entire point
again
is that
under
big companies
communism?
will
Hold
create
on.
big companies
Okay,
will try
guys,
to
guys,
create.
guys. Time is up. Man, that was great. You guys rocked it, man. Thank you so much for your participation. But we do have somebody I'm gonna bring in. It's not over yet. You both still have strong arguments to make, but there is somebody I'm gonna bring in that's going to be a dissenting opinion to both of you. PhD Tony, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. Yes, sir, we can. Now, most of the people in the audience are familiar with PhD Tony. If you're not, go check his channel out. He does great science presentation, and he's destroyed the flat Earth single-handedly with some of his observations. So we'll skip all the formalities, and we'll worry about those at the end. Tony, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Yes, I do. I think that everybody's overlooking the simple simple mechanical realities of human existence. Humans are social animals. An individual human is not actually that viable an entity on its own. It needs a social structure around it in order to survive against more dangerous animals. That's how we develop to where we are. Correspondingly, the larger the group of humans you can collect together to unify their work effort, to unify their productivity, to unify the force that they can apply and the resources that they can liberate, the more evolutionary advantage you acquire. So this whole anarcho approach, everybody just lives separately and doesn't interfere with one another, is both myopic and impractical. A larger group is going to outcompete you for resources and they're eventually going to come and they're going to conquer where you live, and you may not like it. You may think that that's unethical. You may think that that's a violation of some ethical norm that you think everybody should be everybody should be adhering to. Well, stiff shit. It's going to happen, and the reason governments and nation states exist is to protect the people inside them from external threats and from internal threats. And we pay the nation state in order to do that, and we pay them a fair rate for that to happen. And the argument that taxation is theft is gibbering nonsense. It is, you have benefited from the existence of a society. You achieve enormous benefits from that, and you should pay for it. Not paying for it is just errant, irresponsible, immoral greed.
Hey, Tony,
Okay,
one second.
that's my starting position.
Yeah, I want to say, you guys feel free to interject as well. This is not the PhD Tony nap time experience.
Okay.
So,
all right.
but
I'm done
honestly,
now, so
no. I want you to stick around, Tony. I would like these guys to argue with you on that point, because I actually side more with you on this point than I do
I
with
agree.
Anarchy. So go ahead.
I agree with PhD Tony. I don't think that's nonsense.
Who says people are not going to group up? That's ridiculous. Right now, everyone's forced to be grouped up. So if you let people group up voluntarily, they'll be even more stronger than they are now. I
no.
don't see what the problem.
No, that's a. If that were true, then governments wouldn't exist. The nation states would have been overcome by things like the Hanseatic League or these anarchistic. History doesn't agree with you. History suggests that there is an advantage to nation states getting together yes, it is. And you can make blanket statements all you want. You're just wrong.
No, I mean, for the first 2,100 years, there were no states. Unstable form of government. They usually break up. They are not really resilient forms of government. They're really not.
Okay.
Forms of government.
Yeah. Governments have conquered in history because they always have the most money, because they just steal it and can sustain themselves.
Yes, but at the end,
Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead, Tony.
So my question to Ed is, why do you not live in an anarcho-capitalist society? There are several that operate around the world. Why don't you go and live in one?
Because I like the place.
Somalia, for instance, is an anarcho-capitalist society. You can buy stuff there. There is no government interference.
Yeah, again, I like the place where I live, and I would rather this place.
Okay, then pay for it. If you like where you live. No, you don't. You're saying that taxation is theft. No, it isn't. You're paying for the right to live where you want to live.
So I don't pay taxes? Are you kidding me? Come on, man.
No. Well, then don't call it theft.
It is, because I
It's
don't
a
have a
price.
saving
It's a transaction. You have the option to go somewhere else where you won't get charged any taxes. You prefer not to
That's
go to those places because because they suck.
I was born here already, so it
So
doesn't
what?
matter.
Why?
Yeah,
Hey,
so
Tony,
Why is that
how,
important?
how can Somalia be anarcho-capitalist and have a president? How does that make sense?
Well, the government just isn't effective, right? There exists some people who
A
call
government.
themselves the government, but they don't have any actual ability to enforce their will on the people inside their country. They cannot enforce the law.
so
It's an
so
anarchy.
right. So you're telling me that a place with a government is anarcho-capitalist?
Yes,
Yep, the government is too ineffective. The government just doesn't do anything. So the
they have
government may
no.
That's
as well not exist for the purposes of
retarded
the
thing I've
individual.
heard this whole night.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, that was the most retarded thing I've heard all night.
Yes, me too.
Okay,
I agree.
please do not use the word retarded. And I would rather that you address the point. If the government, so you're saying that if somebody stands up and calls themselves the government anywhere, then anarcho-syndicalism doesn't exist.
No, that's simply
Anarcho-capitalism.
I believe that was directed at Rampant, right? Because Rampant's the one that brought up the president being available.
I mean, they have a
No,
parliament.
no. Ed is the one making the point about anarcho-capitalism just not existing as long as there is anybody within 400 kilometers who calls themselves the president. I'd like him to defend that position.
Well, I think Rampant's the one that said that because of Somalia having a president, how can they possibly be a narco-cap or an anarcho-capitalist?
Because the president has no effective power to enforce his policies or
But they
the law.
They do it. They have a military even. The Somalia armed forces.
Yes, in some portions of the country, but not all of them, no. There are portions of Somalia that are just completely ungoverned anarchy, where there is no law enforcement, where there is no military control.
As I know, Somalia is actually a state. It's a failed state. I agree, but it's a state.
Yes, but again, the existence of somebody several hundred kilometers away who claims to have control over a particular area is of at best academic interest.
Okay, could you name me?
They are incapable.
I would really like
You're
to know
dropping
a
out.
really anarchist place. Excuse me. I would really like to know a place in Somalia that is anarchist, that there's no rule, not at all, nothing, like nothing. Like, is there a
you want me to come up with a place name in Somalia?
Yes, a specific place, please.
Okay. Well, give me a moment to do my research.
Okay.
But okay. Okay. So the border between South Somalia and Somalia is effectively uncontrolled.
Do you have a study or a paper or something that talks about how people live there? Something.
Yes, violently and despicably.
No,
you can read up on it on BBC News. You want some academic paper?
Something,
no, I don't. No.
Okay, fine.
All right, let's pick another place. The Highlands of New Guinea. There is no effective government in the Highlands of New Guinea. Why don't you go and live there? Either of you. Yes, you.
Again, like the place where I live. I was born. Why should I move?
Yeah, where you're born is a matter of accident. You had no control over it. I fail to see how it is at all relevant to anything.
Right. So why should I move then? Why can't I just live
Because
where
you
I
don't like your government. If
I
you don't
don't
like
like?
the, if you don't like the state, if you don't like your government, then why don't you move to another place where there is no government?
That's a question for
Where
the both of us.
I live, and I would like this
Yes.
place to change.
I actually like my country.
And I
Okay,
would
but
like to have people not interfere with my life without me asking for it. I would like to have
okay.
my
So
own.
let's move on to the next state. Do you understand the role of sanitation?
I do.
You mean like sewage
Okay.
systems and
Yes, sewage systems. Do you understand the effect on your health if your neighbor doesn't have an effective sewage system?
yeah, sure.
Yes, I do. I
Okay,
actually
so your
tried
neighbor
it.
makes a choice on their property and your children die of typhoid. Is that okay?
No.
Okay, then how do you stop it from happening? Because they made a decision on their property. You're saying that their decisions aren't your business. So you're saying that that's not okay, but you're suggesting we live in a system where we can't do anything about it.
Well, as long as you don't hurt other people, you're free to do what you like. As soon as you start
But they
interfering
didn't.
with
They didn't.
them,
They didn't hurt other people. The typhoid hurt other people.
they didn't. So they didn't cause that typhoid to be spread around their neighborhood or something.
They provided the opportunity for the typhoid to be around, but they didn't actively do anything.
Right.
Now,
Who-
I want to
and-
interject.
and,
I want to
okay,
interject here and say that Tony's making an excellent point about this because, from my perspective, for both you, Ed, and Rampant, from my perspective, you guys have made arguments for the lack of oversight, government oversight. Even if it's at the local level, there's a lack of government oversight. And if you're to say, well, yeah, the lack of government oversight should be okay, and then we should take care of it as a community, well, then you are asking for some kind of oversight at the community level. So Tony does make a very valid point here, and I'll give you both a chance to respond to it.
Okay,
Well, I want to
I'm
respond
not against.
to what you said about the typhoid
you
because
Well,
with that
Rampant,
logic,
let Ed go first. Let Ed go first, and we'll bring you in after Rampant, okay? Go ahead, Ed.
by Tony's logic, you can spread any disease and you're not responsible for anything. So that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, how do you intend to enforce sanitation standards on somebody?
Well, maybe there's people who own the property and rent it out. How about that? And they have
What
to take care of it.
are you
don't know.
even talking about? That
When
makes
you
no
live in,
sense. That your response is literally
apartment complex and the owner of the thing has to take care of it. Or are you talking about people?
yeah.
who
But
own
what if you own a house? What if you own a house and they own the house next door? How do you make sure that they have decent sanitation standards?
Because otherwise it would be breaking the non-aggression principle if you go around spreading.
Yeah, and who
diseases.
enforces this non-aggression principle?
Private security, I guess. I don't know, something.
Okay, so who pays them?
Whoever wants
What if a corporation comes along and pays them more?
Yeah, pays them more.
So now they're not a private corporation for you. They're a private police corporation for the company. What happens then?
Well, then you didn't hire them, and they have nothing to do in your neighborhood.
Well, then who enforces so you can't enforce. So suppose your neighbor is richer than you, and they pay off the private police force. So you can now do nothing about their sanitation.
Right.
Yeah. So your kids die. Great system.
You'll go.
Okay, can
what
I?
did you say?
Right.
Just because there's a doesn't mean there's not a court system.
Why not? Who
Because
pays the
you can say
judges? How do you ensure their neutrality? What if the richer person buys a judge?
you ensure their neutrality now.
Yes, we have a system that at least partially ensures neutrality. You're going for the highest bidder system, which completely abdicates any attempt to even pretend at neutrality.
It's the highest bidder system today. Are you telling me judges can't be bought out today?
I'm saying that there are anti-corruption laws, and I'm saying that if you try and bribe a judge, you will find yourself in serious trouble. And as soon as you successfully bribe a judge, I suggest you come back and tell us how you did it.
Okay, now
But
here's what
until
I'd like.
you've done it, don't peddle conspiracy theories to me. Thank you.
It still happens, Tony.
Okay, let me.
It may do, but an imperfect system is no. I just want to finish this point. The
Yes,
fact
sir.
that the current system is imperfect is no excuse for discarding it completely in favor of an anarchy. That is idiotic.
Now,
But it's
I want to.
And nothing is going to be perfect. Nothing is going to be perfect. Live with it.
I know. I
Okay.
said it was.
Okay,
You live
okay.
with it.
Guys, yeah. Let me turn that same question to Rampant to give you a chance to answer it. As Tony stated, if your neighbor chose to have a lack of sanitation that directly affected the health of your children, how would that work in an anarcho-communist society?
Okay, first of all, I'm not against nations, and I'm not against. There will not be a state, but there will be a government, and perhaps a nation, and probably a country. It depends on the community, and of course, the community will agree that no, we need sanitation. So they will make a voting, and they will agree, yes, we need sanitation, and they will put sanitation in place.
Okay, so now we have sanitation, and the government enforces the sanitation laws. How do people conduct transactions? What do they give one another?
It depends on the type of community. It could work under a free market or under a gift economy.
So yeah, but is it a barter system?
No, it could be a gift
I
economy.
give you a cow, they give me a horse, something like that.
No, as I said, it would not be a barter system. It could be a free market, or it could be a gift economy.
Yeah, but what's the currency?
It will not.
What's
have
the currency in this system?
There will not be currency.
There will not be currency, so people don't get paid in
No, they
kind.
don't get paid. No, it will be.
Okay, so why do they work? So why do they
stuff.
do work?
To make stuff so they can have a gift economy.
Yeah, but if they're not going to get paid for it, they'll make stuff for themselves. They won't make stuff for other people.
Or under a gift economy, not a barter economy.
I find the concept impractical. You know, and it's one of the reasons that you constantly. I need to finish this thought. It's one of the reasons that you constantly have agricultural disasters in communist countries, is because there's actually no incentive for people to grow extra food, to go out and grow, an extra field of potatoes on the side, because they're not going to get paid for it. So there's no reward for that, and you need to be able to reward people.
There are no
and sort of.
What are you talking about?
Pardon?
What communist countries?
Okay, let's talk about China and the USSR. They both had agricultural disasters as a result.
They are not communists; they are socialists.
I believe Tony's talking under the regime of Mao. I believe he's talking about under Mao, which they were a communist state.
No, that was a socialist country. I mean, as a communist state, is actually.
I find the distinction unclear. Can you explain why this is a problem for socialist countries, but isn't going to be a problem in a communist country?
The definition was actually made first by Lenin, and communism is like the final stage of socialism. It's a society which lacks money, capital, most forms of classes, and it doesn't have a state. And socialist is
So
is a
why?
I
Allow me to repeat my question. Why
haven't
is
finished
the agricultural collapse that happened in the USSR and China not going to happen in a communist country?
because you mean a communist country is a bit like an oxymoron. There cannot be a communist country, like there cannot be a communist state.
Okay, a communist system.
Okay, I don't see why will it happen. For example, Rojava exists, and
It's happened every time in the past.
when in the past in the Zapatista movement that happened. I have never heard that they had that problem ever, and it's a communist
Yes,
place.
but they've got a very they're not at state level, are they? They're a very small commune. Yes,
Yes,
anarcho-syndicalism can work on small groups, but as I have previously stated, a larger group will come along and tell you a smaller group that they're no longer independent,
I never said
because
will be.
there are more of us than there are you.
Yes, but I never said communism will be global. I never, or big enough. I
No,
actually
but
said
if communism is only effective on small scales, then they're going to get subsumed into a more efficient system.
or they could defend
And this
themselves.
is they're not going to be able to defend themselves unless they can form a large state apparatus, which they can't do. We
Or
just
they
went
can make
over that discussion.
They can make alliances with other anarcho-communist places, and they can have a force to defend themselves.
Yeah, and then you've got the matter of regulation. Then you've gone into centralized authority, and then you've gone down the communist state argument.
Or you could have direct democracy.
Direct democracy is an impractical form of government. It can only work on small scales, and it only works in
Direct democracy.
if the participants in the democracy are well informed and well educated. And this is the other problem with anarchy, is that if I've got a large corporation that misinforms the public,
and it works, and it's not a tiny place,
how many people?
I don't know what's the population of Switzerland. I think a couple of millions. Let me Google it.
You're claiming that Switzerland has no private enterprise. Is that what you're saying?
I say 8 million people, more or less.
Okay,
So
but you're saying that that's a communist direct democracy.
No, I'm saying direct democracy can work in large groups.
I wouldn't consider 8 million a large group.
8 million.
That's smaller than Manhattan.
Okay, if you want to say 8 million people is a small group, I think that's a bit subjective,
Given that once you're at nation states, you're talking about China has 1 billion, right? You've got nation states around that have like 10 times the population that Switzerland has.
8 million people under direct democracy cannot defend themselves.
I'm saying, well, Switzerland is a particularly weird situation because it's geographically quite difficult to get through, and there's nothing really worth owning once you get there. It's not got huge resources. It's not got.
Yes, I don't think there will be much worth in an anarcho-communist society. I mean, it will be a really simple way of life.
Yeah, which means that but if farmland suddenly becomes valuable, then people are going to want to take it off the anarcho-syndicalists because if they have farmland.
For example, if this happened after a collapse of society in climate change, probably these anarcho-communist places wouldn't have like a lot of agricultural value. They will be
well.
really
I kind of think that the larger, more militaristic state organizations are going to subsume the anarcho-syndicalists. And we saw this happen in the Spanish Civil War. Actually, one of the most spectacular successes of socialism was the anarcho-syndicalist communes of the Spanish Civil War. And what happened to them? Who ended up in front of the country?
Yes, but it doesn't always happen. For example, there are a lot of anarcho-communist tribes in Africa, and no one actually like goes there
That's
to kill
right.
them.
Yeah.
Now, hey, what
Yeah,
I'd like
but
to
if
do, what I'd like to do is kick it to Ed Freeze. Ed, you can challenge Tony on anything he said, and then I'm gonna give you the last word. Rampant to challenge anything on Tony said. Tony, feel free to respond as well. But we're gonna do those
Mhm.
two parts, and then we're gonna wrap it up, and I'm gonna turn it over to questions from the audience. Go ahead, Ed.
All right. All right. Well, I would like to make one statement, and then I have one question for you, Tony. The first thing, if you want to really have direct democracy, so to speak, well,
I
what it
don't.
comes down to eventually, well, it's actually better to be involved with a lot of things, and the best way to do that, because in the end, it comes down to what stuff gets funded, and the best way to do that is by voting with your money, and that's basically what anarcho-capitalism means, because you make voluntary transactions, and the people, the business with good business practices will keep their customers, and the others won't, and they will die out.
Nonsense. Demonstrably
Mm,
untrue.
well,
Okay,
actually not,
so
but
let me
okay.
respond to that. Let me respond to that. Let me respond to that point.
Okay. Wait, are you still there? Am I cutting out?
No, I can hear you.
You're fine, Ed. Tony, are you there? Tony's mic may have cut out. Tony, we can't hear you. If you want to
Oh
rejoin the
no.
call. Now, while Tony rejoins, I want to ask a couple of questions. This comes from Jeff Roberts. He says, in an anarcho-capitalist system, who enforces the rules that keep someone from taking someone else's property?
Was that one for me?
Yes, yes.
Right. So there's always self-defense, right? If you own a piece of land or you have your house or whatever, you can have self-defense, and things like the police will still exist in anarcho-capitalism. It will just be different because they work directly for you, as opposed to enforcing the opinion of some politician. Um, yeah, that's it.
All right, and then the second question was also directed at you. It says, when a fight breaks out, who stops it? And then when if it's a simple answer, then we can always scale it up to a riot. Well, who would stop a riot from occurring?
Right. I don't know. The people themselves, I guess. But let's think about this for a moment. People have riots like in heavy metal concerts. People run up to each other, they punch each other in the face. I think it's called a death pit or something. So that's all voluntary. And if a bunch of morons want to go on the streets and they all want to fight each other and do whatever they like, well, as long as they're not damaging my property, go ahead. I don't care. Do what you like. It's your responsibility, not mine. And I guess the
Uh,
same applies to a one-on-one fight.
okay, okay. All right, so until we get Tony back on, I'm going to read a couple of the super chats that have come in and give everybody in the audience a Go ahead, Rampant.
I don't know if I could put the last. or we can do it after the super chats. You tell me.
Oh, you know what? Here, let me turn it over to you guys. I'm going to give you each a chance to say your final words, and then we'll get to super chats and questions. Okay? Rampant, I will allow you since you were getting ready to speak. I'll go ahead and allow you to make the final word for anarcho communism. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to clarify something. I actually think that anarcho-communism could develop in a number of different ways. So, for example, one way will be that climate change gets so bad that different places, especially places in the south like Africa or Latin America, will have like a full society collapse. Entire states will collapse because of famine, of pestilence, of unemployment, of protests, of riots, etc., because of climate change. And I think that in that scenario, we could have a sort of hunter-gatherer anarchist society, like a really primitive society. That's a way to get it. And I think another way to get it that will be much better, for example, would be if technology advanced so much that robots can do the thing for people, and we can get a post-scarcity economy. And since people don't need to work to keep producing, capitalism will lose sense, because why would you make people work for wages and then buy things if robots can do it cheaper and for free? So that's another way to get to anarcho-communism. And of course, there's the Marxist way of the dictatorship of the proletariat. So when people ask me how this anarcho-communist society will work, it actually depends a lot of how we get there. It's through societal collapse due to climate change. It's getting through a post-scarcity economy because of technological advances. Is through the Marxist way, which I personally don't like, or is it through another way? So the way we get to anarcho-communism is really important to describe how this society will work at the finer details.
All right. And Ed,
But
you have your last words.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think it was a very interesting debate. This was my first live debate, by the way, and also first time really talking this long about the topic. Um, I like that Tony came in and challenged both of us. Um, I didn't call him a retard, by the way. I said what he said was retarded, not him personally. Um, yeah, I still think anarcho-capitalism is the best system. Um, well, it's all about having your own responsibility and not having someone forcing their authority over you. It's fine if people are in authority over certain things, but the difference is you need to be able to choose whether you want that authority over you, or do you want to live somewhere else, or do you want to do whatever you want without harming other people, of course. The free market always gives us innovations, I think is the word. It improves the quality and the price of products, because with a government, they can just steal more money from you, and their product won't be disappearing, and they have no incentive to improve on it. So, yeah, I might have not explained it in everything in the best way, but again, this is the first time talking about it in this kind of setting. So, thanks for
Well,
having me, and thanks
yeah.
Rampant for debating me.
Yeah, so
okay.
let me tell both of you guys something. I appreciate both of y'all coming out on here and sticking your necks out the way you have. I believe both of you guys are holding an unpopular opinion with the chat, which is totally okay.
Oh yes.
The idea behind these conversations, excuse me, the ideas behind these conversations are to help you be a better presenter and to help you be able to present your ideas in a way that even the person who is ignorant, like I am, of each of your positions is able to learn something about it. Now, again, I don't agree with either one of you in this thing. I don't believe in anarchy. I am I guess a soft libertarian, because I do want the government to stay out of most of my life, but I'm okay with them interjecting themselves in things like health, police, fire, and other things. I believe you made a good point, Ed. Like in an anarcho-communist world, what would inspire someone to build a particle accelerator to discover things like the Higgs boson, where that has a fundamental strength for science. You know, it's strength in science, but who's there? Who's there to ensure that money is set aside for those types of discoveries? Now, and I believe it was. Rampant. You made that point, correct? You made that point that if there's no monetary benefit for a capitalist or for a capitalist company or society to discover something like the Higgs boson, how does anarcho-capitalism ensure that gets discovered?
Yes, in fact, many like science discoveries were made by by people that were just doing things because they loved the science and not because they were getting a profit. Like quantum mechanics. When quantum mechanics was discovered, it was useless. What do you want quantum mechanics for? You cannot make money. But the state paid these people so they could discover this, and many years later, quantum mechanics turned out to be like the hot shit, and it
Now, let me be the dissenting opinion here, because you said something that was so beautiful. The state insured, and
Yeah.
that's not really an anarchist way of viewing it. In an anarcho-communism, what would inspire the building of the Large Hadron Collider and the discovery of the Higgs boson?
probably the people. So, let's say there's a scientist, and a scientist wants to discover this because he thinks that there is this particle. He could bring it to the council, to the people, to every people in this community, and say, hey, I think this is a good idea. We could vote, and you guys could help me if this passes the threshold for the voting. Let's say 50%. So
Hey,
they could vote to happen.
okay,
Can
one
you hear
second,
me?
Tony. Yes, sir, we can hear you. I was just
Uh-huh.
about to say we can hear you now. I have no idea what was going on there.
Yeah, well,
But
the battery in my headphones died, is what happened there. So
ah,
my mistake. I just wanted to correct Rampant slightly. Quantum mechanics was Planck developed the theory of quantum mechanics while he was working on a private contract for a light bulb company. Um,
Again,
so
you.
okay,
But I mean,
but
pick another.
but the central point stands. The central point stands that there's.
There are many.
all right. But yeah, thank you very much. Now, Tony, if you're still there, I see your volume. I just saw the video go away. If you're
Mhm.
still there, I always do this at the end. I mean, both of these guys are fairly new at debating. I brought you in because you're not new at this. And I knew that you not only strongly disagreed with them, but you also held, you have a certain debate presence on YouTube. So that's why I wanted to bring you on to help make these guys better at presenting arguments, even if you don't agree with them. So, how would you rate Rampant and Ed Freeze in their arguments tonight?
Okay, so I thought that Rampant was extremely effective at putting Ed on the back foot. Ed only late in the sort of back and forth decided that he should be questioning Rampant's position, and sort of I think Ed, you could have suggested that you had the right to ask rampant questions earlier in the exchange, because you really allowed yourself to be put on the back foot as
Right.
because as I think I made clear, I feel like there's a lot that that rampant should be on the defensive about with his position, but once it got to the discussion, you kind of let it. Because Rampant was asking all of these questions, and like I say, you did get there eventually, but I think you needed to get there because it did seem like he was all over you asking these questions. And I would, I know I've been harsh about, and I am harsh about libertarian ideology, but there is a lot of benefit that we get from social structures and social contracts. And I think that it's easy to overlook or assume that these things will be the same if we take away all of the government regulations. But corporations have been very immoral. So I just
look at that, at refining your position a little bit, because it seems like you do rely on some sort of enforcement for your non-aggression pact and some broader definition of non-aggression than is immediately obvious. Rampant, I think you were quite good about about putting Ed on the back foot. Ed made some very good points about sort of the viability of your proposed social structure, and I think that it cannot necessarily work on large scales, and so you've got to kind of come up with a better. I think you've got to kind of work on the benefits of this. Why is this so much better than the current system? Why would this, produce better results? How would it produce better results? Because I don't think that was entirely clear to me. I
had a part where I explain it, but I can do it if you want real quickly, if there's no problem with that.
Okay. I mean, I will admit I came in late and I missed most of your presentation. So I missed the opening presentation. But this is just because once it got to the discussion point, you were very good on pressing Ed and putting him on the defensive, but you weren't necessarily. But what you were saying was more Ed's wrong, not I'm right. And I consider that to be, you weren't really defending your position, you were attacking Ed's. And I kind of think you need to do both. You need to sort of present why your position...
I can explain you real quickly. For example, I think that some forms of anarcho-communism will have to happen if climate change continues at the rate it's going and society in most poor countries will collapse. I think that it's going to happen and we need a plan. And I think under that situation, anarcho-communism will be the best form of government under those circumstances, for example.
Well, I think that circumstance will only persist briefly until social cohesion returns and large groups decide that they can unite together to take resources off smaller groups. In a resource poor environment, there is going to be an even greater incentive for that to happen.
I don't think anarcho-communism was ever made to be like eternal or perpetual. I actually don't think any form of government can last forever. And anarcho-communism as government will one day just disappear, like all forms of government.
And I would just ask, and returning to Ed, please don't use the word retarded. I understand that it does get used a lot, but please do not. I think we need to sort of lift the standard, and I realize that I opened up by using the word idiotic, and so calling me an idiot, calling me a fool, that would have been fine. But the word retarded, I just think is a little inappropriate. Does that seem fair?
Well, sort of, but it wasn't at you as a person; it was at your argument specifically. I didn't say you are a retard. I wouldn't say that.
Okay. Even so, I think that it's a word that we could use less. Does that? I'm not trying to be too harsh here. I'm trying to be sort of gentle about it. I'm just asking you to consider it. You don't need to respond right now, anyway. So.
Right. Yeah, I'll keep it in mind, but I can't make any promises.
Okay. Well, I slip myself sometime, and I have to pull myself up because I regret it when I use it.
All right, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read the super chats out now, and then we're going to take some questions from the audience for you two guys. Tony, you're more than welcome to stay. I'd love to have you around. So if you feel like staying, go ahead and hang out here and respond as you feel necessary as well. We're going to start with 2AHD Cat for $5 says, "Hey team, remember our hanky panky and email earlier? Mod me now." Yeah, you're right. I do remember that great conversation with you, and you did share a really cool video. I appreciate you sharing the video. Crafty Keela for €5 says, "Just popping in to give some love and support before sleep. Team, I sent you a DM on Discord. Hey chat." We love you too, Crafty. Bella Charge for $5 New Zealand dollars. "What's up, fuckers? Let's go, baby." What up, Bella? PhD Tony for 5 Aussie dollars. Ed, if everyone who specializes in economics and history disagrees with you about the nature of capitalism, then you're the one that's doing it wrong. Go ahead, Ed. I'll give you a chance to respond to that if you'd like.
Yeah, a lot of people say a lot of dumb stuff, and just because a lot of other dumb people agree doesn't make them correct.
Okay, that's exactly the same argument that a flat earther would give about gravity.
He's not wrong, Ed. He's not wrong, but I hope you understand. He's not he's not calling you a flat earther because, like I said, you're anti-flat earther. But that is a similar type of argument that they would give to a question. Like
but the point is, people are still calling Hitler right wing, and people are accepting it because it's written on Wikipedia. So come on.
No, it's definitely true. Like he went to enormous trouble to get people like Messerschmitt and Porsche on his side to support his platform. He had private industry. Also he rose to power by shooting communists, right? It was always the communist threat. You must give us emergency powers. So that we can stave off the communist threat. So to claim that it's a left wing movement, I think that it's
yes, it is.
I think that it's disingenuous at best.
Hitler had private property. He believed Marxism and socialism was a Jewish conspiracy. He put many communist people in the concentration camps.
That's what communists and socialists do to each other. That doesn't really matter. If he put people in camps,
yes, you can use your own definition of right wing.
That's what they do.
Want. The fact that people disagree with you doesn't make them dumb. It makes you wrong.
It makes them parrot Wikipedia, and they can do that.
Also, communism and socialism usually is an international movement, while forms of fascism are actually quite an ultra-nationalist, so they can cross a bit.
Ed, I have a question for you, Ed, and this comes from Nathan Termson in the chat. It says, ask him exactly what policies, and I'll let you say, if you can just name one, what's one policy that Hitler introduced that was left-wing?
I don't know off the top of my head. I didn't really prepare on this topic specifically, so...
That's understandable. That's just a question. You made the comment that Hitler was actually left wing and not right wing, so I just wanted.
You know what? After the stream, I'll answer it in the comment section because at this point I didn't think about it.
And I want to say that when he does answer it, guys, feel free to disagree with him, but please show respect. We're not here to harass anybody. Ed did, he's holding a very unpopular opinion. And he's brave enough to be on camera to do it. So I will give you that much props. And somebody asked if you were a Poe, and I want to say that he's not a Poe. He does believe in what he's saying, and what he's saying is genuine, and I appreciate that. Bella Charge for 5 New Zealand dollars. I vote for the guy on the right. That would be you, Ed Fries, because he looks like the love child of Team Skeptic and PhD Tony. Tony, if we had a baby... I think if me and you had a baby, it would kind of look like Ed Fries a little bit. I'm not even going to lie.
It might, though I think he's more attractive than either of us. If on an objective level, he's a more attractive person than either of us, huh?
And look at Rampant with all that hair. I mean, God, dog.
And so's Rampant. Both of these people make me feel old and ugly. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's my
All right, and then we have Crafty Keela for €5. Learn the systems that you are proposing and how to present them with a plan to get there and beyond. That is my advice to both debaters. Have a great night. And I'll let you guys take that in, and y'all can do with it what you want for the next debate. Bella Charge for 5 New Zealand dollars. I would make both of these betas and the receiver of swollen goods in the true anarchy system. Yeah, Bella's been in the chat saying that he would dominate the world, and who's with him should we all go to anarchy. So the ruler of the world is Bella Charge moving forward.
He gets my vote.
He gets my vote
Yeah,
too. I already told him I'd be his number one peasant.
Hail Bella.
I could be the jester, I play with both.
Oh God, can I get that in the chat? Ed Freeze said it best. Can we get it in the chat? Say it one more time, Ed.
Hail Bella.
That was rampant, wasn't it?
No,
Oh,
it was
Hail
Ed.
Bella.
Hail Bella.
Hail Bella.
Hashtag Hail Bella in the chat. That's what we want to see. Bella charged for $2 New Zealand. Damn you young kids, get off my lawn. Yeah, I think he was talking about the property thing that you were talking about, Ed. Bella charge for, and that's the one thing I want to say. From at least my perspective of the argument that you presented tonight, what would stop me if I had, millions and millions of dollars and you just owned a plot of land and I said, man, I bet there's oil under his land. He doesn't have the ability to mine that oil or to drill for the oil, but I do with my millions of dollars. What keeps me from just taking the land from you? And even if the rest of the community comes together to stop me, what if they don't have the money and resources that I have? Is your land now my land? And when it does become my land because there is no government to stop me, does it then get passed on through inheritance to my children?
Well,
actually,
you would have to take the land by force.
then.
I have
Actually, that
millions
was
of dollars. I have millions of dollars. I can do so.
Can I add
Right, but
something
there's
little?
also millions of people, and if they get to hear like some oil companies trying to get his land from some poor guy who can't defend himself, well, I don't see why they wouldn't just come to my defense or something,
But what if I told the other people I'll pay you money I'll pay, the people around you, I'll give you some money to just ignore the fact that I'm about to steal this guy's land. And if you don't want to ignore the fact, then I'll take the ones that will ignore it and we'll just build a bigger and bigger and bigger army with my millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Right. Well, there's always people who also have millions of dollars, and you can't tell me that none of them will come to the aid of the smaller guy.
But what if
Yes,
I
can.
I
Yes, I
don't
can.
have a perfect solution for. I don't have a perfect solution for it now, but it's not such a huge problem as you think it is, because people still
Can I say
care about
something
each
really?
other, and it's not just. Yeah. Okay.
Actually, that form of logic, that if someone has a land but it's not using it usefully enough, Locke was one of the people that was pushing capitalism when it was being created, and he said, if Indian people have land but they are not using it effectively, we can just force them to get out, and we can put English people who can use it really well. It was actually the logic many capitalists used back in the day. If you are not using your land properly, we can take it.
But now let me argue with you there for a second, Rampant. Who's to say that that I'm not using the land properly? What if my idea of using the land properly is using it so that I can ensure that my kids stay fed every day? Not your kids, not the kids around the corner, but my kids.
Yeah, of course, the people that enforced this were using a European or Western idea of effective use. So it's actually just a made-up idea. If you think that using effective land is one way, and the people that live there think that using the effective land is another way, and you have bigger guns, you will just kill them and take the place.
Yeah,
And
but
say you are
I'm talking about your position now. I'm talking about your position, not necessarily Ed's. I want to ensure that you understand what I'm talking about. Anarcho-Communism right now. So if I disagree with the people around me and I stress it to them enough, my children need this land for this food. My family needs this land for this food. It might not be the most effective way the land is being used for the community around me, but it's the way I see it to be used most effectively. What happens then? Do you just take my land and ensure that I use it effectively according to the community around me?
It will probably get voted. People will vote to see what will happen.
I mean,
because there's a difference.
But yeah, okay, but I still think you're missing my point. Like, what if I don't agree with you and I say I'm not letting you change my land? It's my land. My father owned it before me, his father owned it before him, and I intend for my children to own it after me. Why do you feel like it would be okay for the community to come in an anarchy society, to come in and either remove me from the land should I not agree with them, or just force me to do what they believe to be right?
Okay. I think here we need to make a little distinction. In left-wing politics, there's a difference between private property and there's a difference between personal property. So, private property will be probably communally owned. Private property will be things that you can use to make useful things. For example, an industry, a factory, a river. But personal property will be things that you cannot use to make commodities, like, for example, your house or, for example, your bed. And that will be yours. So they could not take it. But private property will be communally owned. But personal property will not. Now, given even if that distinction is being made in a anarcho-communist society, and they will most probably make it, in case someone try to force you out of your house, you could either try to defend your house or get people in your side and try to defend it with other people. But in anarcho-communist societies, there usually is a difference between private property and personal property. And personal property will not be like subject to a democratic system.
Okay, I still guess I'm ignorant into how you would determine the difference between the two, but we won't go into that so much. I just wanted to ask the question. Bella Charge says for $2 New Zealand, when I become emperor of the world, it'll be global. I think you mean it'll be flattle, Bella Charge. Oh wait, we're not telling people that the Earth's flat just yet. That's not tonight's debate. No, again, all hell Bella. You know. Mark Beiser for $5 in pure communism. Now, I guess this will be directed to you, Rampant. In pure communism, who does the difficult, dirty, and/or dangerous jobs that are necessary to maintain infrastructure and civilization?
Well, it depends. For example, if we get to anarcho-communists through technological unemployment, the answer is really easy: the robots. If we get to anarcho-communism, through economic collapse, we will probably have hunter-gatherer societies, and we will have too much of infrastructure, or we will have really primitive infrastructure. So it really depends how we will get there.
Okay. And that also goes to you, Ed, in an anarcho-capitalist society, and again, Tony brought this up very well. Who does the difficult, dirty, and/or dangerous jobs that are necessary to maintain infrastructure and civilization?
The same people who do it now, but they'll get paid more because they're not taxed to death, and the people who are paying them are not taxed to death.
Yeah, but taxes always get put. Well, I'm not going to say always because I don't want to make a statement like that. But the purpose of taxation is for so like for instance, let's say police officers, right? You pay a tax to your city, and in return, your city gives you some sort of police protection. That's something that you don't have to pay for in the future directly to the police to protect you because you're already giving it through taxes. Same thing goes with hospitals. Same thing goes with fire departments. So I know that earlier in the debate you said, well, you could always hire your own private security, but what if you're not in the position to do that? What if you're not in the position to hire your own people to do your sanitation, or hire your own people to police your fence? And let's say you're also not in the position to do it yourself. How would that work in an anarcho-capitalist society?
Right. Well, I'm assuming that you either don't have enough money to pay for it, or you just don't care. Well, if you don't have enough money to pay for that, then why would you even seek out to live in such a place where you have to take care of it? Go live somewhere else. Go rent a house where the person who rents out the apartment complex or whatever it is.
What if they were born
Uh,
there?
yeah. So
It was a valid argument for you. Why is it not a valid argument for them?
what do you mean? They're already living there.
What?
So
Yes,
Yes.
they're already living there, but they can't afford to pay for the maintenance or the sewerage or whatever. But it's the house that they were born in, and they don't want to give it up.
So not maybe not them individually, but you can still come together as in the community and
Yeah,
buy it for
people
as
don't
the
do that. People don't do that voluntarily. Can I just make a point here? Do you know what the
fine.
top marginal Do you know what the top marginal tax rate in the United States was in the 1950s?
No, I'm not sure.
It was
Can
90. It was 90%.
yeah.
Now,
All right.
during the 1950s, the US built a transnational set of highways and dams that they can now no longer afford to maintain, let alone build replacements for. And why can they no longer maintain or build replacements? Because the top marginal tax rate is now at 47%, and most people don't even pay that. In the 1960s, the top marginal tax rate was 70%. Sorry, under JFK, and moving onwards, and the US was able to send a man to the moon. This entire thing about if you lower taxes, private enterprise will come up and they will build the infrastructure. No, they fucking won't. If that was the case, then the lower tax rates that have been instituted since Reagan would have resulted in significant improvements in infrastructure in the US, and instead it's decaying. And the reason it's decaying is because the Republicans won't approve any increases in the taxes that are supposed to be paying for the maintenance of it. There's supposed to be a petrol excise that the Republicans have frozen for the past 40 years. So it's not even close to paying for the maintenance of highways and dams. And you can claim that private enterprise is going to magically change its ideology as soon as government no longer exists. I don't see how your factual basis for that conclusion.
Well,
Yes, yeah,
the
okay.
reason they can't maintain it now is because there's no competition and they can just make up any price they want, which they did. And to say
No,
now,
that's nonsense.
well, they can't pay for it anymore. Well, then they shouldn't have made
Uh,
such big prices behind closed doors in the first place. Then they wouldn't have all these problems. Because if you do things on the free market, you will have competition. And that means if you don't make a good quality product that's cheaper than the next guy, then the customer will just go to the next guy and you'll go
You're
out of business.
you're
So
overlooking you're overlooking
there's
you're overlooking
incentive,
the central.
Tony. So there's an incentive to actually make a better product that's also cheaper. That's why prices will
Okay,
go down. It will be very affordable
just,
on the market.
just a reminder that the golden age of capitalism was after the post-war era, when taxes were an all high and Keynesianism was on, and it was the best era of capitalism when there were more state regulation. Just
All
telling you.
right. All right, so let me continue on. Let me continue on because we have I've got a couple of questions that have been coming in from the chat, but I'm also going to read the super chats as well. So, and this one's kind of directed at you. This comes from Weeaboo Metalhead for $5. He says, Ed, are you in the Mark Stevens dash Larkin Rose type of anarcho-capitalism philosophy?
I have no idea who those people are. Sorry.
That
I
would
can look
probably
it
be
up.
a no then. Do you mentioned a few people, did you not, at the beginning who have the type of ideology that you actually ascribe to?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, maybe it was
I would,
Rampant. Maybe it was Rampant. Go ahead, Rampant.
I will actually put Ed in more like the Rothbardian school of anarcho-capitalism. I don't think he's either in the Hoppian school or other schools. But I really think that if you read Rothbard, you will actually get a lot. He has some really good books on anarcho-capitalism.
What were the names again, team? Larkin Rose
Uh,
and
Yeah, Larkin or Mark Stevens dash Larkin Rose. And again,
Yeah,
if you feel like doing some research and then responding in the comment section afterwards, feel free to.
that's what.
J-
Yeah.
yeah, JL Warren for 4.99 says seems these youngins didn't think social infrastructure through. And I believe that there is something to be said about that. Like, I don't think an anarchist society can work at all. I think maybe at some point at the beginning when we were first developing society, it was necessary. I believe Rampant brought up the hunter-gatherer type systems. I believe that worked for the people because they didn't have the technology. And I don't think that that any form of anarchy could actually work in today's society. And I'll give each one of you a chance to answer it. Since I brought you up first, Rampant, you can go ahead and answer it first.
The Rojava movement and the Zapatista movement are anarcho-communist, and they currently exist. And I left in the presentation a Wikipedia page with a list of all the currently existing anarchist movements that, well, they exist, they are real. So
Okay, I'll be sure to add those to the description to your links that you had for sources. Ed, would you care to talk about that?
Yeah. Sorry. What was the question exactly?
Just asking, like in an anarcho-capitalist society, how would an anarcho-capitalist society supplant the social infrastructure of today's society?
You mean like social infrastructure? You mean like welfare and all that stuff?
No, police, health, social services, fire department.
Yeah, it will actually be on the free market, and because there's competition and unlike government thing, they are actually held responsible because you can go to the competition. You're not forced to buy their product. There's an incentive for them to improve it and improve the quality and have it cheaper, so it will be affordable for everyone.
You are aware that fire departments, for instance, used to be private corporations, right? This was the case in Rome, and what happened was when a building set on fire, there were multiple cases of two fire departments turning up, and then instead of putting out the fire, they'd beat one another up in order to get the money that was being offered by the homeowner, and the home burnt to the ground. So the whole idea of well, things are going to go smoothly. We don't need people telling one another what to do. We don't need dedicated, impartially funded agencies to do this stuff. The reason we have these is because in the past we tried the privatized options and they didn't work. We have historical examples of failures of private enterprise in these markets.
Right, but that was obviously not done correctly because I assume those people didn't have like
everything bad is a bad example, and everything good is a good example.
I assume they didn't have like a yeah. Well, the point is, Tony, you're forgetting people have their own responsibility, right? I shouldn't be
Yes,
able
but
to be responsible
that
for
doesn't.
their faults, the dumb shit they do, when they discuss with this fire department. That's up to
But you
them.
can't have it
Not
both ways, mate. You can't say,
yeah,
"Well,
I
I'm
mean,
not responsible if the system fucks up," but people are going to
we
step up to be charitable to other people. That's
have
a
actually
complete double standard.
no,
of
it's them
capitalism
fucking, not me.
failing.
Not
We have the we have the Indian famine that was caused in great part by the East Trade and Company of British. We have part of the Opium Wars in China that were also caused by private interest. We have really good examples of capitalism failing.
Okay. Before we go any further, I just want to address I've had a few people complaining about the mods out there. Listen, for these conversations, these are very emotionally driven conversations. Not everybody's going to agree with you. And what I would ask is not to over moderate right now. Unless you see hate speech out there, like any transphobic, homophobic, racist, any speech like that, by all means, mute, hide them, whatever. I don't care. But if you just don't like what somebody's saying in the chat, just don't mute them. Disagree with them all you would like or ignore them. That's your choice. But please don't over moderate. That's not what we're here to do. We're here for a discussion of ideas that we may not agree with, or because I don't agree with these guys. And I am totally okay with both of them having this conversation right now, because I think it's something that, to be honest, it strengthens my resolve that both of these guys are holding an incorrect position. And that's the way it should be. So thank you, but thank you, mods. I will always defer to you guys, but please don't over moderate, and thank you. All right, so next question from God's Auditor for $5. Both of these guys require every human in the system to be on the same page about where the community is going, which will not exist in real life. Would either one of you like to address that?
Yes. As I said, I think that under any of my scenarios, there will be many types of societies. Some will be anarcho-communist, others perhaps are states, others may even be anarcho-capitalist. I've never claimed that my system will be global or that it will happen like everyone will agree to it. I think that it will happen in various places, and but never in the scale that everyone will agree, or it will be global. I think that other type of societies will be around.
Yeah, I think so too. It won't be the same everywhere, and that's the beauty of anarcho-capitalism. You can decide for yourself. You can do what you like as long as you don't harm others. So if it's completely voluntary that you go live in a gulag, have fun. Bye bye.
Hey, look, you can have anarcho-capitalism in Europe, and I will have Latin America and have anarcho-communism.
So, so the controls that are necessary. You need to make sure that sanitation works. You need to make sure that there is a system for detecting shoddy and lethal workmanship in products that are produced. You need to have a system where these defects are made public, because if they aren't made public, then the public can't respond. It is most convenient to have a currency. It is most convenient to have impartially administered contract law that is as uncorrupt as you can make it. It is most practical to have law enforcement and fire fire departments and emergency responders who are as impartial as can be managed, as opposed to people whose entire motivation is how much money they can screw out of people. If you argue that there's got to be a court system, but that the court system can't be, you don't want a court system where people just throw money at the judge and get a finding in their favour, then you need to have some impartial governmental presence. It just doesn't make sense what you're suggesting.
Yeah, it actually does. But why do you need government for contracts? That's so weird to me.
Well, who punishes people who don't honour their contracts?
Well, oh, you mean like that? Well, you can, if you sign the contract, you can go to a court if it's not upheld by.
Who runs the court exactly? The people who pay the judges the most money. That's right. So this seems like a system where wealthy people and wealthy corporations are going to do extremely well, and the individual is going to get screwed over at every point.
Hey, Tony, that already happens because the wealthiest people buy politicians to make laws and regulations in their favor. Don't act as if that's not happening right now.
Yes, but to say that, that's like saying that bad science occurs, therefore all science is crap. Again, this is flirt logic. Just because the system we have now has imperfections to it is no reason to abandon the system for something demonstrably worse.
This way, there's also no accountability because the government won't run out of money whatsoever. They'll just steal more. And if you run bad business practices under anarcho-capitalism, you don't have any customers. There you go. No government to bail you out with our stolen tax money either. So you just go bankrupt unless you behave.
Do you agree that you benefit from being a part of society?
That doesn't justify theft.
So you are accepting, if you don't want to pay taxes, move somewhere where there aren't any. You have that capacity. That is an option open to you. Do not try and sabotage my society with the enormous cost in life that is going to entail, and claim that, well, your money is more important than the millions of people who are going to die because of the collapse of society.
They die.
I'm not interested in that sort of. Okay, why are they going to die? Okay,
why?
Who's going to protect people from murderers? The private corporation?
Again.
Oh, what if the murderer is really wealthy and they pay off the private police corporation? I beg
you
your
hire
pardon?
another one. I mean,
yes, and then what if they hire the bigger one, the better armed one?
What happens if the poor people cannot pay security? Look, they're poor.
Yeah, that's what that's the point I was, and that was the point I was kind of making earlier, was that, like what Rampant said, the poor people simply would not be able to defend themselves, even in numbers, versus somebody who had millions of dollars for advanced weaponry and, to pay for a privatized army.
Right, but under anarcho-capitalism, there are no poor people because nobody's taxed.
What a load of bollocks.
You're only poor if you decide to do that by yourself.
Oh no, that is bullshit.
Well, yeah. So what if you come up with an idea that's a failed idea? Then you would naturally, in your society, you would naturally lose out on money. Let's say you designed a product, right? That you thought, you put all your life savings into a product that you thought was something everybody would enjoy. And in a capitalist society, in anarcho-capitalist, you would definitely be responsible for making your own money. So you'd have to find some way to make money. If you did not make the money, then you would be poor. If you were poor, then you could get a job.
That's it. Get a job. Yeah, get a job. You're not taxed to that. You keep all the money.
But what if the bigger guy says, I'm only going to pay you 50 cents an hour?
Then go to another guy. More.
Okay.
Why is this a problem?
Your argument is so fatuous. Like, not everybody has skills that can be marketed for a lot of money. Your claim that you just need to go to an employer who will pay you more. Also, automation.
Have if you are in a wheelchair or you have low intelligence and you can do anything. You can't do anything. Like, there are people that just can't work in the market.
That's correct, and there's like several million charities that exist today, and they're in. I think I don't remember exactly.
Yes, there's also government support, and you want to take away the government support.
Given to charities. Well, if you're not,
what
will
happen in anarcho-capitalism with the charities if there is a
1 second, guys. Don't talk over it. Rampant. Let him finish his thought, and I'll let you ask your question. Go ahead, Ed.
You don't need government support if 70% of your income is not stolen by them.
Well, yeah. Who pays 70% tax? Tell me that.
Overall income tax, everything you buy is taxed. So, and then there's of course
that is nonsense.
For example, the United States doesn't have a 70% income tax since at least Roosevelt.
No, it's all added together. It's all added together. In the
okay, but my question
that is hideous misinformation. That is just a barefaced lie. People do not pay 70% of their income in tax.
My question was, what will happen in a capitalist society during a recession? The charities are going to disappear. Nobody's going to pay a charity in the middle of an economic recession, which is exactly the moment where people need more assistance.
Why do recessions happen?
Oh, okay. I know what you're going.
Because market conditions change. Because market conditions change.
And
are
largely.
fundamentally unstable.
And I would argue that in an anarcho-capitalist society where you didn't have some kind of form of government regulation, the markets would change much more wildly than they already do today.
they would
Particularly
improve
since
much.
you've got no mechanism for preventing market manipulations by wealthy stockholders.
Great Depression, for example,
you
happened.
argue like corrupt corporate practices aren't a thing. People will
Yeah, you
pump
mean
up the
like
stock in a company and then abandon it.
Right. You mean
Oh,
like
stop
politicians?
stop that
stuck
stop
in
that intellectually lazy nonsense.
No, that's actually a very good example. Politicians are allowed
No,
to
it
have
isn't.
stock things, and then they
Well,
implement
okay,
some
in some
regulation.
countries they are. In some countries they aren't.
Yes, in the United States, with one of the largest economies in the world. Yes, that's correct.
Yes, that's right. But
Right.
you could fix that by making a law where they
Now,
couldn't, right? Rather than removing all laws entirely.
Do it through their friends or whoever. It's not
now
going to change.
I want to ask a question to both of you guys because this question just popped up and it's a very, very relevant question. How would each of your proposed positions handle the pandemic that we're going through currently? And I'll give you the first answer, Ed, because you're the most opinionated about this that I know. So go ahead, Ed, and then Rampant, you can answer as well.
Well, has to do a lot with education, informing people correctly. Don't just do it through
Who would
some.
educate them? Just out of curiosity, who would educate them? We're living in an anarchist capitalist society. Who would educate
How long
them?
would that take?
Yeah, so
How many people are going to die during the education process?
Bring out their information that they have. You can inform people in all sorts of manners, but it's
and what if there are people misinforming people?
Yeah, exactly. That's what's going on right now, actually. But
and what stops that from happening?
Well, what stops it from happening now? Nothing. So that will always be a thing.
Yes, isn't that a case for more regulation?
No, absolutely not.
Why not?
So you would, in your society, you would sacrifice lives over regulation of misinformation?
It's not sacrificing lives because I'm not in control of those lives.
Well, I'm talking about not you particular. Yeah, I'm not saying you particular. Go ahead, Tony.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Just because you're killing them by negligence doesn't mean you're not killing them any less certainly.
How is that my responsibility?
Well, weren't you the one arguing that rich people are going to step forward to do stuff through altruism, and all of a sudden it's how is that my responsibility? So which is it?
Yeah.
Are people responsible for making stuff work, or are they not?
That depends if you took on that responsibility.
Depends on whether it's good for your argument or not?
No, it depends on if you took on that responsibility to begin with. If you have like a contract that says these are your responsibilities,
you were arguing that people would spontaneously step up to help poor people, and
responsibility, Tony. That's voluntary. They can do whatever the fuck they want. It's not.
Yes, but you're arguing that it's inevitable that they will, and now it's not inevitable.
Unless they sign the contract. Unless they sign the contract.
1 second.
That is unenforceable under your system.
Their responsibility. No, that's very important because everyone is free to associate with whoever they want. And if I didn't take on any responsibility through a contract or whatever means exist at that time, I'm not responsible for anything.
So you pass a person drowning in a river. You're not contractually obliged to save them, so fuck them.
That's a straw man. Typical flat earth argument.
No, it isn't. That is exactly the same argument.
Nope. No.
All right. Listen, guys, we're gonna get past that. I'm gonna let Rampant answer that same question. How in an anarcho-communist society where there is no government infrastructure, how would they deal with this pandemic?
Okay. As I say, it depends how do we get there, but generally, I would think that since people are living in a community, kids, little children will be teach that you must take care from other peoples and you must take care of your community. And of course the adults will also have this mentality because they will be inside a communist society, and they will think we need to take care of our fellow man, our fellow brothers. And in case of a pandemic, they will probably make an emergency council, and they will vote, they will discuss between them what are the best solutions. They will and they will take the
What if the
decision.
solutions conflict with each other, though, Rampant? What if those solutions conflict with each other? Who steps in
They
to
will,
say which solution is correct?
if the solutions conflict and they discuss the topic and they don't get to any sort of agreement, they will vote to see what the people think it's the best solution and what they want.
Can I make a point here?
Yes, sir.
One of the things that we have decided is a good idea is actually to have pre-existing organizations whose job it is to gather information so that informed policy making can occur. And what you guys are both overlooking is that there is no private enterprise incentive to construct such an organization. So the decision-making processes that you are saying will occur will be uninformed because there is no information, there is no money in the information gathering that you are suggesting unless the government decides to invest in it. Now, if you argue that there should be no government, then you're going to be making uninformed bad decisions, and you're not going to be able to make well-informed good decisions because you don't have the necessary administrative infrastructure. And this is why your anarchist approach is going to kill people.
And I agree on both sides. On both sides, it would kill people.
I think the problem is that you are assuming that unless there's a profit motive, people won't do anything, and I don't think that's true.
No,
we can see.
No, you've missed my point. You've missed my point. My point is that the infrastructure needs to be there before you even know there's a problem.
You can have
before you know there's a problem, you need an infrastructure that's in place, and neither of you have any mechanism for sustaining such an infrastructure. So you're going to waste time and resources rapidly erecting an infrastructure that may not be fit for purpose.
I don't see why in an anarcho-communist society you cannot build that sort of organization. If you can build houses, you can build schools, you can build hospitals, you can have all that. People just vote, okay, we need a hospital, and they vote it, and they say, okay, you can do it. The other people say, okay, I will do it, and they do it because they will have a really strong sense of
because there is so I'd like to address that because there is a case of minimum weight. These things can you need a large enough population in order to have a large enough corpus of technical expertise to produce people that are appropriately qualified, right? So you need an education system. You need a qualification system. You need laboratories. You need there's a whole bunch of infrastructure, and 8 million people is not enough to make it. Right, Switzerland does not have the necessary research facilities to protect itself from a pandemic that is on a continental scale. It just doesn't work that way. So the small scale, localized political structures that you are suggesting make people vulnerable to this sort of mishap, and it costs lives.
It really depends on the form of anarcho-communist society. If it was like a techno-anarcho-communist, you will have infrastructure, you will have robots that will do all this. For example,
that's more. I think that's more of a discussion for UBI, because that's part of the tenets of UBI is the idea that we're moving towards a more more technologically advanced society that may rely less on actual labor from a human worker, and that's a topic for another discussion.
The more tech there is, the more repairs you need.
I think that in that type of society, you could have the necessary infrastructure. If it was a post-civilization society, look, like hunter gatherers in a post-climate change society, I don't think pandemics will be such a big issue because they will be really tiny communities. The
Okay.
virus will not be able to spread too much.
Well, let me argue that with the Black Plague, which was a virus, or I'm sorry, a bacteria, I believe, and
Yes.
it was passed on and killed people within a few days of contracting the bacteria. That in itself, what you're talking about, is a much further time back in time when there were a lot more isolated societies from each other, and it still managed to spread from one community to the next without a problem. When it
Actually,
comes to,
Or or
go
the
ahead.
plague attacked
Justinian plague.
Yeah,
not so
Justinian
rural.
plague, all of them. Go ahead, Rampant.
The Justinian plague, the Black Plague, the Spanish flu plague of 1918, the Antonin plague, they all attacked primary urban societies, really settlements. Rural places were
No,
not affected as
no, no, no. The number of death in London was outrageous. So I would argue that point against the point you just made, that London was a bustling society, had doctors and everything, and the plague still attacked the society and still killed relatively the
no,
same
no.
number of people it did outside of the big city.
I'm saying between rural places and urban places, rural places tend to be less affected by pandemics because there's less people there and people live more
There
far
were
away.
entire
While
parts of the there were entire parts of the there were entire parts of the English countryside that were completely depopulated. The cost of labour rose by a factor of about 20,
I'm
which
not
gives you
saying
some idea of how many people died.
rural places were not affected. In fact, one third of the entire European population was affected. I'm saying they are
That's
not
a
as
low
affected as
estimate.
All right, so I'm going to move on to the next couple of super chats because we could talk about this all night, and we already have for several hours. So we're going to keep it moving forward. Still feel free to interject as you guys feel like you need to. The Athens 619, my motherfucking man, how you doing? Since we never, or for $5, since we never legally acquired the North American continent and killed the original inhabitants and took the land, we are not legally Americans. And that would be directed at I believe you, Ed, because the original white settlers that came over here were not Native Americans. So am I,
Right.
from my lineage up, from the parents and grandparents and whatnot that have been in this country, are we foreign invaders here because we were not born here? Is it our land now because I was born here? I mean, where is there any kind of government regulation on, if Mexico was to come up and retake Texas, would that then all of a sudden be Mexico now because Mexico owns Texas? I mean, do you understand the point that's trying to be made?
Yeah, I understand. It might have a different name, but the point is that all these things were done by governments, and the people who were born there had no say in the matter. You were just born in that country, so should you lose all the rights to a piece of land that your family has lived on since they moved there? And let's not forget that.
But what about the
Uh,
previous owners?
but yeah, but what do you mean the previous owners?
Well,
It
by
wasn't
your
like
definition,
every
well, hold on,
square
hold on.
inch.
Right, right. But by your definition, let's say, right. Well, okay, we can use that argument by every square inch. Well, when I was born, I only occupied a certain amount of surface area on this planet. Is that the only amount of surface area that I'm allowed to own? Of course not. And I know it's a
No,
ridiculous
no, no,
question.
no,
I know
no.
it's a ridiculous
I
question. So
wasn't
that's
finished with the statement.
okay. Go ahead. I'll give you a chance to respond.
The thing is, not all of the land, not every single square inch of land was owned by every Native American, right? There were like incredibly huge places where absolutely nobody lived. So is it a problem if someone comes there and sets up a house? I don't think so. Why
Well,
should it?
okay. So if you owned land, let's say you own 10 square acres of land, okay? And I came on there and said, well, you don't
Right.
actually live on all these 10 square acres of land. I'm going to live
No,
on
but I
these
own
two
it.
square acres. But but see, that's the thing. When you're saying that you own it through inheritance, let's say, well, so did the Native Americans. And if they said from that
No,
mountain to this mountain, that's our tribe's lands, and then somebody moved into a portion of that tribe's lands and said, well, this is now mine, and I've now, born children on this part, on this
right.
portion of the land. Therefore, I'm going to pass this down for them because they're now native to that land, which is not the case. Like, we have governments that are put in place to keep things like this from happening, to keep Texas from taking Oklahoma, or keep Mexico from taking
Well,
Texas.
actually, governments only take land. If you think you own really own the land when it comes down to it, the government just comes in, kicks you out, and does whatever it wants with it. So
Yeah, the same's true of any larger corporation. If they've got, if you've got something they want in your
yes,
anarcho-capitalist system, they'll pay some troops to come in and
yes.
just kick you off it.
All right, so I'm going to keep
No,
going.
because then,
Go ahead.
well,
Go ahead.
Yes,
never mind.
yes, they will.
No, it's fine. That there's still people who will defend themselves, and you would still need to find
Yeah, and they'll
people who
die.
are,
They
and you
can die
still need to
defending
find,
themselves against
people who are willing to do that in the first place.
Well,
Okay.
you're claiming that they
Doesn't make
exist now.
sense.
So how difficult can
Yeah,
you're claiming that
of
they
course
exist
they
now?
exist. Yes, it's
Well,
called the
where are
government.
they going to go?
I
Are they
can
going
buy
to
the
suddenly
government
vanish?
Hold on, Ed.
I
Hold on,
can
Ed.
buy the
Ed, hold
government.
on. Hold on. Let
All right,
Tony
all
finish
right.
asking the question. I'll give you a full chance to answer. Go ahead, Tony.
Okay, so you're claiming that we have a police force. A police force is governed. It has internal regulations. The officers are subject to conditions. You're saying that if we take away all of those internal practices and we put them open to the higher bidder, they suddenly won't be willing to kill for people who are willing to pay them much more money than the government pays police officers. They will kill for the government, you're saying, but they won't kill if a private individual comes up and pays them a shit ton of more money.
That's not the same scenario, because right now people are in the army, for example, and they think it's actually a good thing to go to another country and
So you're saying private military corporations
people.
don't exist?
It's like, no, but they think they're actually defending something or doing whatever.
Are you saying that private military corporations don't exist?
Sure, they do.
Okay. Do they kill people?
Sure, I guess.
So
think it's a
people are
legitimate
willing to
thing.
kill other people? No.
Right.
No. A lot of
What do
people,
you
a
mean,
lot
no?
of people who are in the a lot of people who are in the army commit war crimes. They kill people when there's no justification for it.
Right.
So you're
Well,
saying
when
that they're
is there a
suddenly not going
justification?
to be willing to kill? Pardon?
When is there a justification?
When that person presents a clear and present danger to a larger body of people.
Right.
All right, so let me move on with the super chats. I appreciate the passion behind this, guys, especially you, Ed, Rampant, and Tony. Man, you came in like a goddamn hammer. I'm glad you're here to put these guys on their toes. Josiah Hansen for $2. Leaving for Texas at 6 a.m. We'll email you some ideas tonight. Yeah, do it, Josiah. Hit me up on email. Let's link up if we can. Weeaboo Metalhead for $5 says, do either of you subscribe to the Venus Project idea, specifically having everything provided by automation instead of people and no monetary system? Rampant, I'll let you start with that one.
Well, I actually think that having no monetary system, robots make everything. There's not much need for the government at that point. I think yes. I think that will be the best case scenario, and I actually think capitalism is moving towards that direction, because in capitalism you want to make the most of profit. You want to make the most of money using the less money, and the what is the part of a capitalist industry that wastes more money? It's the people that you employ, because you need to pay them wages. So capitalist people will be that will replace people that work. Now, the problem with this is that if you don't have employees and nobody have employees, nobody gets paid. And if nobody gets paid, nobody will buy the things your robots are doing. So I actually think that that contradiction will eventually, with enough technology, will make capitalism collapse. And we will get to this robotic, space gay communist society.
We'll save that for another topic, another day, Rampant, because I do feel strongly when talking on those specific topics. But again, that's a topic for another day. But thank you for answering. Ed, would you like to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever gonna get rid of capitalism through that, because you still need people to make the machines and repair them. Even if they can repair themselves, things can go wrong. You need to always make sure they're not on the brink of taking over humanity or something like that. So capitalism will exist.
Now, the next super chat came from Rampant for $2. Or wait, I'm sorry, 1,000 claps. I looked at the wrong thing. 1,000 claps. Chilean pesos, my friend. He says, I think the Rampant dude did pretty damn good. He says, did it well, but I'm going to say, I do think you did, Rampant. I think you're growing into a good presenter, and looking back, I felt like you were much better tonight than you were with your supernatural presentation, from what I remember. But I want to congratulate you on doing such a good job tonight. Now, Ed, how do you feel about Rampant Super Chat? I think that Rampant dude did it well. What would you say?
Well, that guy's pulling it out of his ass.
As opposed to you pulling it out of where? Between your toes?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, everything that comes out of an ass must be bad, There can be good ideas, and you can pull out your ass. Just say.
No, I think you did all right, but I do this for the first time, so what can I say?
Hey, there's a first time for everything, and it gets so much easier moving forward, Ed. It gets so much easier. Foehammer 335 for $5. Bella Charge will get absolutely wrecked by Foe's superior understanding of tactics, training, and ballistics. So, can we get a all hell Foehammer in the chat? All hell Foehammer. For $2 New Zealand dollars, how would free market police work? That's a gang. And that's one thing I did want to point out, and when you were talking about earlier about the free markets would hire their own police force, at the same time, if Walmart looked down on, some little moms and pop shop and land that they use to supply their shop, and they hired a personal police force or a private police force, there would be nothing to stop them from just taking over that land. There really wouldn't be. I mean, there's no way you could say, well, all the people would come together. Well, that's really making an argument for Rampant's side. That's the Anarcho-Communism idea of defending the land, is by bringing the community together to fight Walmart, or the army of Walmart. But then the army of Walmart, which has the money, could go around and just purchase all the, the miniature warlords and say, hey, look, don't even worry about getting into this. Here's a bunch of money. Just stay out of it. We promise you it'll be better. And what's to keep that person from going, okay, give me your money and I'm not going to defend that little piece of land?
I don't know.
Hey,
it's honest answer. Honest answer.
What is stopping Islam extremists to just acquire like nuclear bombs and trying to attack Ancapistan or Anarcho-Capitalist society? How do you stop religious fanatics?
It's a good point.
Well, Islam is not really a religion. It's a political ideology where religion
Islam is a religion.
Implemented into it. Well, no, it's a political ideology with many religious aspects. But to call it a religion, that's false. It even has its own laws and everything. So,
well, you could say society is based around that.
That's an entirely specious argument. By that standard, Christianity is a political movement.
Well, does it tell you how to run the country, how to run politics?
Yes, it does actually.
do
Yeah,
everything in your life.
Romans 13, 1, 2. Any government in place is only in place by the grace of God, for God has put the government there. If you go against the government, you are going against God. That's directly from the Bible. I'm not word for word, obviously, but
Right,
that's
but that doesn't tell you how to run the government itself, for example. And
well,
those
okay,
are
but
things that are
Yes,
in Islam.
but the Ten Commandments do, right? What should be legal, what shouldn't be legal. The claim the claim that there is no specific guidance there. And indeed, if Christian, let's leave Christianity aside. Let's say Judaism. Are you saying that Judaism, where there are very clear delineations about how the country is about how a nation is supposed to be run, do you
Right.
suggest that that's a political ideology with religious trappings? And
Well,
given
Tony,
that Christianity is
well,
between two other political,
yeah.
why does Christianity claim to have broken free? Go on.
Well, let me ask you this: Have you Have you read the Quran and the Hadiths and other texts that go with it?
Yes. Well, I've read the Quran in
Really?
translation.
Well,
Yes.
I see. Well, you need to know how to interpret the Quran, and the only correct way in Islam to do that is through the Prophet Muhammad. So, unless you read the texts that go with it, I don't think you really know what you're talking about if you're telling me Islam
Have
is
you
not a
read them?
political ideology.
Have you read them?
Yes, I actually have. Yes, and it's
Okay.
really
So
difficult. I needed
So,
assistance with it.
so
That's how horrible these texts are.
you're claiming that there is a definitive statement about how government works. So, and this is dictated. So, under that reasoning, there is only
Oh yeah,
one Muslim government.
absolutely.
all right. Well,
So,
let me
did you just agree with me that under that reasoning, there is only one Islamic government?
According to the interpretation of the Prophet Muhammad, yes, that would be the only correct
So
interpretation according to
Iran
the
and
Prophet
Iraq
itself,
have
actually.
and Indonesia have the same government.
That's not what I said. I said there's
I
only.
asked you.
Yeah, but so let me rephrase it then. Under the correct interpretation of Islam, and by correct I mean the only correct interpretation, which is from the Prophet Muhammad, because that's the highest authority under God, so to speak.
You are making a
Yes,
declarative
there is
statement
only
there
one
that I
type
don't think.
of.
No,
Yes.
then your argument is spurious. To tell the truth, that's a false statement. You're saying there's only one. I assert that there is only one type of Islamic government, and it's the one that I say is Islamic. I mean, a lot of Muslims would disagree
Tony.
with you
No,
violently.
it's not. No, Tony. It's not what I say is Islamic. It's what the Prophet Muhammad says is Islamic.
It's what other people say the Prophet Muhammad said
No,
is Islamic.
Tony. Yeah, but
Yes.
you can read for yourself what he said, Tony. That's the whole point. So people can make up all sorts of stuff that they want, just like they make up a lot of stuff. Well, Jesus said this and that. Well, that's very interesting, but his actual words are written down.
So you're not a
can
Muslim.
read them.
You don't speak Arabic, but you are telling something.
How do you know that actually?
Do you?
You're just assuming.
Do you?
Don't.
Yes, I am. Because if you did speak Arabic, you'd know better than to say such stupid things.
No, that's actually not stupid at all. What are you
yes,
talking
it is.
About? Look, by the way, are you telling me that someone who's not a Christian cannot talk about the Bible? Is that the logic you're applying here?
No, I think that.
All right. Then why ask me if I'm Muslim? Then why ask me if I'm Muslim, Tony?
I am answering your question, and I am going to continue to answer your question. Okay. A non-Christian cannot claim to understand what the only valid form of Christianity is. That is an idiotic position.
And there's a claim made by the highest authority under God in the religion,
no,
which says the
no,
only correct
no,
interpretation of this book
no,
is my
no,
interpretation. Well, you can keep
no,
saying no, but that's
no,
actually what it is, Tony. Yes,
no,
Tony.
There are many
Yes, that's actually how it works. Yes.
for
Yes,
example,
you
the
can keep
Shia.
saying no, but that's how
Hold
it
on, guys.
works.
Hold on. Hold
Yes.
on. Hold on, guys. Hold on. We're all talking over each other. Let me
It's
allow. I'm gonna allow Tony to answer. I'm gonna turn it over to Rampant, and then I'm gonna give Ed the last word on that particular, and we're gonna keep on with the last couple of super chats. Go ahead, Tony.
utterly fatuous for a non-Muslim to tell Muslims how they should interpret their religion and how they should construct their government. You may say that this is the only valid interpretation. Who the hell are you? It's idiotic and arrogant and completely intolerant. And do you speak Arabic? Answer the question.
Irrelevant.
Okay, so you don't speak Arabic, but you object to me describing you as
Irrelevant.
not speaking Arabic.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
let me turn it over. Let me turn it to Rampant so he can have a chance to speak. I think he's been waiting for a second. Go ahead, Rampant.
It doesn't make sense to say that there's only one interpretation of Islam. You have Sunni, you have the Shia, and you have the Hanafi, the Hanbali. You have all sorts of different interpretations depending on other minor prophets or other people that say no, the prophet Muhammad say this, no, he say that. So you have actually a lot of interpretations. It's not like a monolith, like a unified religion. That's not true.
Okay, and then I'll give you a chance to respond to that, Ed, and I'm gonna let you Tony, I'm gonna let you finish what you were about to say because I know you had something else to say. Ed, do you want to respond to Rampant?
Well, the reason there are so many different denominations is because all of them were in war with each other over who was the legitimate follow-up guy. I don't know the word exactly for Muhammad. Muhammad died, and then there was supposed to be a next leader. Nobody agreed who that should be. And yes, there is only one correct way to interpret Islam, and that's written in Islam, and that's through the interpretation of the Prophet Muhammad, according to his own words. So unless you're prepared to tell me that the second highest authority in Islam is incorrect, just accept it.
Okay, so is
Go ahead, Tony.
is Allah superior to Muhammad?
Of course.
Is Muhammad the only Muslim? Is Muhammad the only Muslim that Allah has ever communicated to?
I don't think so. No.
Okay,
Well,
so
I don't think
you
Allah
would
has
agree that the word of
communicated directly.
You would.
It was through
You would
angels.
agree. You would agree then. You would agree then that the word of Allah, as communicated to a Muslim, would trump the word of Muhammad.
No, because, and by the way, I misspoke. I don't think Allah actually ever spoke to anyone directly. It was always through angels.
Yes, but Allah has communicated His will to other Muslims. That is certainly what they claim, whether or not you believe that it's true. And what you are suggesting. Yes, nonetheless they claim it, and you claim that they're lying with zero evidence other than you prefer that there be a simple monolithic interpretation of Islam, which is,
Well, I never said they were lying, Tony. That's a straw man. Didn't say they were lying.
Okay, so I'm going to be brutally frank with you, Ed. You have presented a sequence of utterly nonsensical positions this evening, from your ill-informed ramblings about Nazism to your deranged libertarian ideas about how anarchism work, to your sustained claims that taxation is theft and you don't need to pay anything to be part of a society. But
that's what I said. That's a straw man. That's not what I said.
I would suggest to you that you might care to accept that other people know more about stuff than you do. You don't accept that historians know more than you do. You don't accept that economists know more than you do. You don't accept that Islamic scholars know more than you do. And you are an arrogant, amoral dick. And I suggest that you remedy that.
But hey, I do
Well,
want to, and
you bromance the hell
just
out of me,
touch,
so
just to touch up on that, because Tony made a lot of good points there about the historical people, and one of the things that you did go against, you said that Hitler was a left, he existed on the left of the political spectrum, when historical philosophers and political historians would all disagree with you. So what makes you think? Well, we'll save that for another debate, but I just want to point out that you
Right.
are in disagreement with political, like people who have political degrees and political historians and all that. You are in disagreement with them, and maybe you should review review the whole thing and see if maybe they're right, or strengthen your resolve that all of those people are wrong and you are right. But
I just
Well,
and that
I don't
wasn't a
feel the
shot at
need
you. That's not
to
a shot at
convince
you.
them otherwise.
Yeah,
No,
that's not
that's
a
I
fine.
just
shot
want
at you. I just want to point it out. Go ahead.
to say something real quickly. So, for example, in my scenarios of anarcho-communism, either the society is really primitive or the society is highly advanced and you have some form of direct democracy. So there's some regulation on what other peoples can do through this direct democratic system. But in anarcho-capitalism, you have a really advanced society in terms of technology, but you don't have any sort of regulation of what people can do in their private property. So, for example, an jihadist, an Islam extremist, could acquire some land. He could get some scientists. He could build an atomic bomb. He could actually do it, and he could just destroy entire places because he believes that Allah says him that he need to destroy these places. So there's you have a lot of technology, you have a lot of crazy people, and you don't have any mechanism to actually stop them from doing this sort of really crazy shit, like the McNukes for recreational purposes.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me get through these last couple of super chats. JL Warren for $4.99. This guy is talking Orwellian levels of control to stabilize this society. And I think that both of the people here are not realizing how much reliance on government your society would actually require to be functional. And you can label it and say, well, we can just all pay one guy who knows what he's doing to handle this, and we can all pay one guy who knows what he's handling to do all of that. And then what you end up doing is inadvertently building a government around the community. And that's just the way I see things from both of your presentations. Reaper 22 actual for $5. The government has laws to ensure the minimum wage equals a living wage. In your system, who would ensure people aren't stiffed by companies? I'll go ahead and that's to you, Ed.
I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
Yeah, how would in your system who would ensure people aren't stiffed by companies? And I want to add to that, who would ensure that companies aren't putting out dangerous products?
Oh, well, because if they do, they go completely out of business. So why would
Well,
they?
that's to
If
assume. Hold
people
on.
get
That,
damaged,
but that's to assume. That's to assume that they're selling the dangerous products to the people they care about and the people they don't care about. What if, again, in the situation, they want the next community's lands and they sell them products that they know to be detrimental to their health, just so they can eliminate that
right?
group of people and take over that land?
Yeah,
Who regulates that?
yeah. That's a form of aggression. So you can protect yourself against it. Go through courts, or there's all
But
sorts of options.
courts are a government construct.
No, they're not. Well, they're
Absolutely,
now.
they
Yes,
are.
they are.
Doesn't mean they need to be. Doesn't mean they need to
Yes,
be.
they do.
But then, yeah, what Tony
Otherwise,
brought up
because
earlier. Go ahead, Tony, because you're about to answer your own question. Go ahead.
otherwise, it's just going to be, the highest bidder wins the case, right?
Exactly.
I mean, if it's just
That
if it's
happens
just
now
more
already.
for no, it doesn't, and that
Yes,
is a
it does.
grotesque generalization. Not as systematically as you are suggesting. The fact that it happens sometimes doesn't
Speak.
mean that the system is broken and you want to break the system.
The system is broken because who decides who gets to be a judge in the first place?
Go ahead,
Yes. Okay.
Rampant.
First of all, we already have Orwellian type of surveillance. In fact, I have one here. It's called a smartphone. They know where I go, what I buy. We already have that. In fact, many people buy it knowing that. That's the first part. And the second part, I think that in the historical context, we already had like really free markets where people were paid really bad. We had in Britain, we had the Industrial Revolution. People worked like 14 hours. Children were working under really bad conditions. And it really didn't get better until the state intervened and put some regulations on the market. Otherwise, people were working like really, really in really bad conditions. And that was a point where the system was really, really free. So yeah, we
Okay, so
have
let
that
me
also.
ask you a question then, Rampant. I'm gonna repurpose that question that was asked to Ed to ask it to you. Who would ensure that the people are actually taken care of in your system?
Well, as I previously say, it depends on what type of society. So if we are talking about the post-scarcity society, probably the direct democratic form of government that there will be will ensure people will have access to all sorts of robots or machines that will help them. In the apocalyptic scenario where society is completely crashed, we will probably have a really communistic sort of society, like in hunter-gatherer societies, where many forms of altruism are actually really strong in this type of population. So I will think that people, out of their will to help their community or their tribe, they will help each other out in this really, really primitive society.
Okay.
So it really depends on what sort of scenario we're talking.
Okay. Now, Brainy Beaver for $5 Canadian says our police sell the services to towns/cities after they break 5,000 population. Before that, the police is covered by the state to support growth. Hybrid systems, and I think he just is a hybrid. It's a hybrid system. Yeah, that's actually happened a couple of times in America as well. When a city has lost faith in its police system, it has sometimes reverted from the city to do the policing and turned it over to the county to do the policing. That has actually happened pretty recently, if I can remember. It's I don't want to say Providence, but I believe it's somewhere in the Northeast. They had to do that. Bella Charge, and that was not too long ago, within the last decade. Bella Charge for $2 New Zealand. Get him, Tony. Go get him. Get him. And that's the last super chat, guys. That's the last super chat. Now, I want to say thank you to everybody for coming on, especially you, Tony, because it was the very last minute thing for you. These guys had a chance to prepare an argument and get it all put together, and you came in completely off the cuff. So totally appreciate you doing that and putting your neck out as always. Do you have anything to say before we close this out?
Okay. Seriously, the way society works, we have, where we have government apparatus, it is usually because we've tried not having government apparatus and it doesn't work so well. So I understand that people don't like it, and I understand that people think it's inefficient. But the decision was made by people in the past that without government apparatus overseeing these things, the system was worse. So, the idea that the system is imperfect, therefore we need to destroy it. How about we refine and improve the system we've got? There are certainly things we can do to improve the way the system behaves now. That's not being disputed. But abandoning the system and just having an every man for themselves attitude, I think it's morally irresponsible.
All right. I'll go ahead and let Rampant. Yeah, you can, since you were the one to start it, you can go ahead and be the first one to say your goodbyes tonight. Do you have anything you would like to add?
Yes, as I said, my versions of anarcho-capitalism are under, you know, robots really in the past future or a collapse of the society, which is something I don't want, but I think that it will happen. So I think that in the meantime, if we don't have either robots or society collapse, we should, as Tony said, try to improve the things we already have, try to improve the government. And in the case we get to this robotic society or this post-collapse society, then we should try anarcho-communism. But until we get to those scenarios, we will just try to improve the government. I agree. That's a really smart move in the meantime.
Okay,
And that,
great, great. Yeah, thank you very much, Rampant. I really appreciate it, man. There was a great increase from the last time you had the debate. I do want to commend you on the preparation you had tonight, and also just being more confident in your arguments than you were in the supernatural debate. I felt like you really you showed a lot of confidence tonight, and you should grow on that, man. Go back and watch this debate and learn from the points that people were making in the chat. Learn from the points that people like PhD Tony and myself were making, and learn from whatever Ed was telling, the points that Ed was saying too. You know, it might change you and sway you in one way or the other, or it might strengthen your resolve in your own belief system. And I think that either one of those is a great thing. Now, Ed, it was your first time
Yes.
to debate, man. You did, for a first timer, you didn't do bad. Okay, I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you on everything, but that's not the point of these debates. These debates are to really get a good, you know, exchange of ideas. People in the chat may not agree with both of y'all. It may strengthen their resolve, or you might have somebody that thinks, hey, you know what, anarcho-capitalism might be a good idea. So go ahead and I'll give you the last word before I do my final argument or my final closing tonight. And I want to just say thank you personally for coming on.
All right. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks everyone for listening, and thanks to Rampant and Tony for debating me. I did expect to be strawman to death and be called immoral without actually hearing what my supposed immoral stance is, but I didn't expect it to hear it from Tony. So thanks, Rampant, for not assuming my position.
Again,
Well,
anarchy is going to
Hold on.
kill
well,
millions of people.
Yeah, Tony, I'll give you a second to answer that since he addressed you,
Okay.
but I'll let him finish his statement, please. Go ahead, Ed.
right. The most people killed are killed by governments, not just freedom. So that doesn't make sense. But yeah, I had really much fun tonight. It was also nice to see the chat going against me pretty hard. I don't mind it if people insult me, by the way. Just have at it. Doesn't bother me at all. So yeah, thanks, and I hope to do it again soon.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back on because some of the things you sent me, there's going to be people that disagree with you on those positions. So we'll definitely work towards getting you set up for a debate. One thing that Ed is very adamant about is the government intervention in regards to social distancing and masks. And he has some evidence that he would like to present, and we're going to set that up for a future debate. I'll give anybody that would like to stand up against that topic and stand up against Ed and his beliefs, I'll give you the opportunity, and I'll make sure that both of you have a clear opportunity to present your evidence. Like I said, you actually sent me some articles that I did take the time to read. I think one of them was not even in English, and I had to do a translation on it or something like that. But anyway, I will go, like, I feel like you have arguments to be made, even though I still don't agree with them. I do feel like you have a valid argument to make that should be refuted. So I'll open that up to anybody in the chat well, you have to be a regular here. I'm not just going to give anybody the chance to come on here and yell at people. But if you're a regular in the chat, which Ed has been, Ed, you've been a regular in the chat for I would say well over a year now since I've been conversing with you in the chat.
At least a year.
At least a year. So please don't harass people if they decide to stick their neck out and come on here and do something, even if you don't agree with it. I will always like allow for people to argue, especially in the chat. I will always allow you to argue. Just please don't be hateful and please don't harass people. Now, you did address Tony, so I'm going to give Tony the last chance to respond to what you said. But go ahead, Tony.
Okay, the infrastructure that you are proposing to disassemble as in order to obtain your anarcho-capitalist setup will kill millions of people. It will do so by neglect, but they will end up no less dead. And it is immoral to suggest that that is a good outcome simply because you don't like paying taxes. And I suggest, my attitude is I don't mind paying taxes at all, because I achieve enormous benefits of from being a member of society. And if you stopped whining so much about taxes and understood the benefits that you obtain from being a participant in a stable and functional society, I think you'd see that it's a price well worth paying. You don't like it, but really, small groups of individuals just aren't competitive. They're never going to be.
All right. Well, that's where we're going to end the debate tonight, guys. Ed, again, thank you very much for holding the more extremely unpopular opinion with the crowd. Rampant, thank you very much for coming on and engaging in this conversation. I do think that you too hold an unpopular opinion with the crowd. I just think there's more. It's Ed's position is a little bit more unpopular with with the people in the live chat. As always, I'm sorry.
Just a final thing. It's a question I've always had, and I didn't have so many people in the same place. So I just want to know what age do you think I have? Like the chat, what age do they think I have? And also you two guys, Tony and Ed, how many years I have? I will.
60.
Okay, I'm going to guess 27.
I was gonna guess around 30.
Okay.
Yeah, 30, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Around
Very
30,
close.
yeah. Something like that.
Were we
I'm
close?
27. Yes, I'm 27.
Oh, 27. Okay. Yeah. You look young, but you carry yourself as if you've been on this earth for more than 2 decades. So that's why I was like, okay, he's about 30, at least in your intelligence and the presenting of the arguments. That's the way I see it, about 30 years old. So it's good to see that you're looking young and stay healthy, stay beautiful, keep that beautiful head of hair, because as Tony can attest, it's not fun. It's not fun looking down to brush your teeth and seeing the light shine off your head, then off the mirror, then back into your teeth, then off of all this. So, but, and I love you, Tony. Thank you, everybody in the chat, for coming out tonight. Thank you for all the super chats, man. You guys are wonderful. This channel is only able to do what it does because you guys are so gracious with your donations and super chats. Speaking of donations, I missed a couple from the last one. One of them was from Jessica G, and she had donated $5. I want to say thank you so much to Jessica G. And then the other one, and I can't believe I'm bringing it up without actually having it set to the side already, but give me 1 second. We're getting towards the end. I got to fail regularly, so hold on 1 second. Let me get this up, and I'll be able to tell you. Let me see who it was. Oh, great. Now it's not it. It's not showing me who it was. All right. Well, I'll find out who it was. I'll make that announcement. They donated $20, and it helps so great. If you feel like after watching this video or watching this debate, you'd like to chip in a few dollars here and there, there's always a link in the description. And I don't say no to donations. Thank you all. And I guess it's time. See, I didn't even have my chair set up. Oh, my goodness.
Come on, you can make it. You can make it.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make it just for you, Rampant. Hold on, let me get everything set up. See, it shouldn't count as a fail. It shouldn't count as a fail because I haven't set it up yet. And my cat's going nuts. I don't want to hurt her. Hold on. hold on, baby. She's trying to crawl up my leg. I don't want to bend back and hurt her. All right, guys. It's been great. It's been wonderful. Oh, couple of announcements. We are going to have the morality of firearms debate with, I believe, Fohammer and Adrian Clark. We're going to try to do these debates on Sunday nights. This is more, I'm going to tell you guys, this is just my way of sitting back and listening. I enjoyed this conversation. Like I said, I didn't agree with either one of you guys, but it was a pleasure to sit back and listen to you guys argue so passionately about it. And I hope to have both of you on in the future. And I hope this, you learn from something in this debate, and it's able to help you grow. So saying that, I'm Team Skeptic, and I'm out. All right.
It's